Two bodies lie on the ground, and she wonders what kind of trash they are. They couldn't even handle a single drop of her blood, yet they want to be her servants. She then ordered her minions to take them to the kitchen to be turned into ingredients. A servant states that the laws dictate that private blood consumption is a crime. They should be sent to a factory for processing. Indeed, things are like that. To give humans the illusion that they can live well, the bloodline law has to be this way, making the strong into their dependents, unable to rebel against their masters, and the weak into ingredients. Her race has controlled the earth for a long time. She doesn't even need blood, but the taste is too good to go without. Her next destination is now Emerald City. Someone tries to wake Ji, saying today is a big day. The young man pokes the sleeper repeatedly. He says that the boy only ever sleeps and does nothing else, and that if he falls asleep in class again, he'll be in serious trouble. Once he's awake, he's told to go down quickly to attend to customers. He puts one of his hands on his face and realizes things had changed. He's Wang Ji, he just turned 25, and today his boss stole a project he had created and his company fired him. He was bankrupt, facing mortgage debt, and his father had been bedridden in the hospital for years, so he decided to drink by the riverbank. At that moment, he saw a young woman entering the water. Worried, he went up to her to rescue her. He managed to prevent the woman from drowning, but as he had drunk a lot, his body decided it would be a good time to lose strength in the middle of the river. After that, he remembers nothing else and woke up in that bed. It's May 2077, the year he was only 18. The boy leaves his room, slamming the door. He hurriedly descends the stairs, wondering if it's really true. Excited, he encounters his father, who is working. He hugs him warmly because his father is well. The bald man doesn't understand anything, but his son says he had a terrible nightmare. A customer complains that he's in a hurry, but the bald man doesn't care, as it's been a long time since his son hugged him. After the emotion fades, he says he'll cut the customer's hair and shoos his son away to start working too. This customer is annoying and says that if the better salons weren't full, he wouldn't be there, and that if his day gets delayed, he'll destroy the place. The boy gets irritated with the petulance of the man, but the bald man says he needs to find a good job. That customer is to be interviewed by Miss Yu, a pure-blood noble, and he is one of the city's promising young men, potentially becoming one of her dependents. These concepts are foreign to the young man, who doesn't understand what they mean, as it isn't the reality he knew. Looking at his tablet, all he sees is news about how to become a dependent. He has no idea what that is. So he goes to see what being pure-blooded means, protecting humanity from external dangers and currently holding all leadership positions. Without knowing exactly what they are, they're already in control of everything. Humanity is governed by these pure-blood beings, and people are complicit. He wonders if this happened after a war or an invasion. Just as he starts his research, a curious message appears on his tablet, warning him that he is food. It's a peculiar being with 3 eyes on its face. He immediately pressed a button to exit the screen. Now he sighs, slightly relieved. He still has no idea what this is, but it's definitely scaring him a lot. The world is very confusing to him. He is certain he was reborn in a world, but it's different from the one he knew. Putting his hands on the mirror, he wonders if this person is really him now. Then he notices bite marks on his neck. It seems it's really all true. He was bitten at some point, and it was by a vampire, but the marking begins to fade until it completely disappears from his skin. With that, he rubs his eyes to make sure he isn't going crazy. Turning his back on the mirror, he imagines his vision might have been blurry, and he must have been mistaken. However, his reflection in the mirror slowly changes, revealing red eyes and a lascivious smile. Already outside his house, he's heading to school, and his father hopes he'll focus on his studies. He is excited that his son is studying at a prestigious school, while the boy wishes his father would take better care of his own health. He reiterated that his father needs to go to the doctor soon, as in his past life, he only treated his cancer when it was already terminal. The concept of rebirth is strange, but he doesn't want to waste this chance now. This time, he wants to live his life until someone calls him a fool. He ordered them not to get in his way. The androgynous oddballs, who would be the target of ridicule in any serious society, tell him this is not a place for him. They are so weird and bizarre that the boy doesn't know if they are even real. The oddballs, full of arrogance, tell the boy to get out of their way, but he is still perplexed that these clowns are referring to him. He's being treated as inferior. One clown says again that this place is for people with a genetic ranking of A or higher. He had seen this somewhere before. Looking at his identification, his ranking is C. One of the clowns pushes him, telling him to leave at once. It's an unacceptable reality. He's being victimized by people who should suffer until someone calls his name. He wants to know if his friend is feeling okay and asks him to come with him. This person seems familiar. The skinny boy with glasses, frail and possibly anemic in this world where vampires control everything, is Wencheng. They were from the same college. The frail one was dedicated to his studies, while Wang was almost a jerk. All he did was vape and chase women who only looked pretty after he was drunk. As soon as he left college, he realized these skills were not valued in the job market. At rock bottom, he messaged his friends who used to go to the clubs with him, only to find that none of them were really his true friends. However, the skinny, nearly blind kid lent him money during those hard times. The last person he expected, so much so that he didn't even know exactly who he was. And indeed, he didn't even know who that frail kid was. He hugged him joyfully and said he missed him, while the oddballs who wouldn't last 2 minutes in any serious suburb are upset. There were many people gathered there. Then he asked the frail kid who they were welcoming, as it must be a goddess. It's the noble Yu, who came to Emerald City looking to expand her family. He'd heard about this, that there would even be an interview. Only he doesn't understand why so many are interested, as he is unaware of the benefits. But by becoming a blood-related member of the family, humans gain supernatural strength and extended life expectancy. Some oddballs say it's not just that. They want to become nobles and live an easy life. And the first step for this is to receive the blessing of the beauty that is the noble Yu. The blessing process is completed when the vampire infuses her blood into her dependents, which for them is an exciting process since she is exquisite. And not just that, specifically for humans. Receiving the blessing makes them feel the greatest happiness of their lives. And since Yu is a marvel, that group of soft and effeminate men want to have a chance with her. Apparently, there's no need to be bitten, which is a great relief. Finally, a caravan of cars arrives at the school. A size 42-foot steps out of the car. That's the goddess Yu, the one the softies have been waiting for. This is the most important guest in the city. Beside her are the mayor and the academy director. The students look at her, impressed by her beauty. Then he approaches his frail friend. What's really important is to dedicate himself to his studies and increase his abilities. One thing he learned in his past life is not to depend on others, and becoming her dependent is basically the epitome of what he doesn't want. What everyone is desiring is not what he wants, until they feel something happening behind them. The frail friend tries to turn to see what's happening. Several fools have been pushed around, and the tiny one is almost about to hit the ground face first. To prevent his friend from needing orthodontic intervention, he grabs him by the clothes. He prevented him from falling, but an explosion had happened. A shockwave is dangerous, and he has blood on his mouth. Behind him, there's a mysterious hooded figure kneeling on the ground. He looks at this figure, very intrigued. The hooded figure stands up, face covered. The goddess Yu is not at all impressed, and the mayor says that it was a close call. She blocked the attack. If not for that, Yu wouldn't be breathing now. Even though he's obese, he's strong with a diamond-level battle rating, but that guy is definitely stronger. He's certain this is an assassin sent to kill him, but he's not sure if it's due to the recent incident. Realizing the fight is pointless, the assassin quickly leaves the place, but he's immediately followed by guards who won't let him escape, or at least they don't intend to. Yu questions if the city security is so poor that the assassin might flee, but the mayor says she is the strongest person there and security for her is merely symbolic. However, she's found someone interesting. While some didn't protect themselves, he looked after his friend even while spitting blood from his mouth, and now she's quite intrigued. A ridiculous guy with horrible hair says he has the highest genetic potential here and would love to be her servant for life. It doesn't take long for all the fools to bow down and make the same request to her. In the middle of the questions, she asks them if they know why there are genetic classifications. They say it's because the human body might not handle the adaptation, so they're separated this way. There are 5 levels. The higher it is, the greater the chance of success. And indeed, he's right, but for pureblood nobles, those limitations don't apply. To her, being class E or A is all the same. A pureblood's success rate is always 100%. That's why they're called nobles, besides being the strongest. Receptive genetics are useless to her. That's not what she needs, because after the blood pact, life begins anew in a way they wouldn't understand. Then she looks closely at the fool with hair uglier than hitting one's own mother. She doesn't need a loser by her side. That comment caused him to have an intense existential crisis. He succumbs to feelings of sadness and decides to end the misery of living with that bizarre hair. However, someone kicks the knife out of his hand, asking him to stop doing that, though it's a shame they didn't kick his head instead. Life is more than being someone's servant, and you should think about that. But the boy is surprised by the influence that woman has over some people's lives. These people are definitely psychiatric patients and urgently need professional and medical help. The ridiculous one got angry for being stopped from ending what he calls life and lunged at the protagonist. But as he's deplorable and mediocre, he fell to the ground by himself, crying like a defenseless child. It's a pitiful sight, but not too much. With that, the noblewoman with an 80s haircut approaches him. She gently touches his lips with her finger, sliding her finger from one corner to the other. She tastes his blood and likes it a lot, then orders him to come to her mansion that night because she wants more. Everyone there is invited to go that evening, as there will be a second test. Whoever passes it will spend the night in her lair. She can't wait to see them again. The mayor says those who are ready should gather at City Hall that night. Anyone absent will face the consequences. The crowd of failures is thrilled that they'll get a second test. While they celebrate, the protagonist is sure that woman is a first-class molester. His skinny friend doesn't want to go, but the director says he has to go too. Coincidentally, he's also his father, even if they don't resemble each other. While he sent the injured to the infirmary, he asked the others to follow him. Since they'll do another test, they also need a new process. They needed to sign a waiver agreeing not to disclose the test's contents. Additionally, he agrees to the possibility of dying in the process. That waiver is simply bizarre. After reading it, he genuinely worried for his life. He approached the director and suggested he'd like to withdraw from the test, but for him, it's already too late. He's already caught Yu's attention. and if he hadn't, he'd be disobeying an order. And this would bring severe consequences since he's just a common citizen and she's a noble pureblood. Behind him, a fool says the boy could stop pretending since he's already seen his discontent. It would even be better if he disobeyed, as his family would be forced into hard labor for the next 3 generations. This is definitely a punishment he doesn't desire. The boy signed his commitment, as it's an honor to have this chance to change his life. The winner becomes a dependent, and those who lose will face death. He leaves with the other fools while smiling. Now only the 3 of them remain in the room. Wenxing doesn't know whether to sign or not, and his father asks if he truly wants this. He thinks he's weak and doubts he'll be able to accomplish anything. However, it was already too late for him. He doesn't understand if it's so dangerous why so many people attempt this test. Since he asked, he'll make it clear. Blood dependents have a very high status, which no common citizen could ever have. Vampires can have private armies and do many things. Their dependents are like their emissaries on Earth. It's as if they were feudal lords on Earth with all this power. The world is governed by the 7 royal courts. Under imperial power, authority is divided according to the strength of each vampire. And Yu is the daughter of an influential baron who belongs to the imperial court, in case he doesn't know. Hearing all this, his hands start to tremble. The world is no longer the same, and he just wanted to live a normal life. But now he doesn't have much choice but to take the test. He admitted his defeat, planning to go to the test and give up quickly to be able to go home. But the director says he shouldn't give up so shamelessly, as Yu wants to see a show. This left both boys intrigued. She will see what she wants, and if he catches her attention, he might even have a happy ending. So he'll try his best and admit defeat when he can to save his life. The boy asks if his father knows what will happen in this test, but he can't stay. He looks at Wang and says that the young man has some combat skills and hopes he can take care of his son. If he does, he will give him all his family's savings as thanks. Embarrassed, he said he can't even protect himself, let alone a frail, useless one. His doubt now is why the director doesn't want his son to become a dependent. After becoming a family member, there's no longer a you in relation to the world. Everything vanishes from your mind, leaving only the desire to obey your master. Thus, one abandons everything that existed before the ritual. This is such a bizarre consequence that he doesn't know if this is even being human anymore. He's a person, and he doesn't want to lose his individuality by becoming a dependent. Wang did not expect this new world to be so different. He only wanted to dedicate himself to work, take care of his father, and eventually have a normal life. But things turned out quite differently for him. He wants to start the blessing process, but he is very embarrassed. Just imagining how it might be, he becomes as stiff as a rock. But the lady approaches him full of desire, saying she can't wait any longer. She throws him onto the bed and says she's going to start. Meanwhile, he tries to stop her, but his effort was minimal. During the second test, he could have actually lost his life. They are received at the mansion by one of Yu's servants. There are 58 candidates, but the maximum number for the remaining levels is only 20 people. Everyone there is capable, and he hopes they can put on a show for his lady Yu. In fact, there are more people than he expected. The director had said there would probably be 3 levels, as one alone wouldn't be enough to satisfy her. His intention is to only pass the first level, so he won't be seen as worthless. And since 20 is the maximum for the next stage, more than half will fail. The fools are eager to start, as they want to join Yu as soon as possible. They shout enthusiastically, as this is the purpose of their lives. The test had already begun, and all those who made sounds without permission are already duly eliminated. This left a crowd of fools in shock. The first rule for a dependent is to be obedient and know how to behave. Making noise without permission is disrespectful. Hearing that, they couldn't disagree with him. Altogether, there were 32 people who spoke, with some even whispering. But that's a lot of eliminations, which would leave only 6 to be eliminated in the next stage, which might not be interesting. Of those 32, only 5 will be selected to proceed to the resurrection battle. This made the fools a little happy. That's what he expected, some enthusiasm. The resurrection battle will proceed as follows. Everyone will be inside the circle, and the last 5 standing will win. They may now communicate freely. Looking at all this, they think the candidates will start killing each other. It's great that he and his friend haven't said anything so far. It doesn't take long before the first knife pierces someone's gut. That is a grotesque scene to witness. Only a few will be able to continue with the test, and that was the quickest way to get to the final. Armed, he says he'll be one of the finalists, and anyone who approaches him will only do so to die, because he's willing to take them all down. That guy is definitely crazy. However, with a rifle in hand, a woman wants to know if he's really capable of fulfilling his threat. There are others there who are also armed. These tests would be harder than he imagined. To be part of this family, you have to be able to face blood, of course. After that pathetic scene, there's a lot of blood dripping. Only 5 people are left from that battle. The rest have ceased living in the process. The woman notices that there's still someone there writhing on the ground. She quickly ends his suffering. Finally, there was no one left there in agony. Master Yu is very pleased with this performance, says the butler, and orders them to return to their teams. The young psychopaths are quite happy now. In fact, the least crazy one that would be a lost cause for any psychiatric hospital. One of them looks at the protagonist, wondering why he's being looked at so much, but they just dodge the question. He's ready to show these young students just how sinister society is. Soon, they better not cry afterward. Seeing this, the skinny guy became frightened, as he's now in the crosshairs of those moral degenerates. However, the protagonist tells him not to be afraid. They've already passed the first stage. During the next one, they can simply give up, and that's okay. The thought of giving up brought him a bit of peace. With only 31 remaining, the first stage will finally begin. This scared them, as it hadn't even formally started and there were already bodies all around. This time, only 20 of them would be able to go to the next stage. Under the butler's foot, a large crack begins to open. He's about to announce what they must do now. The candidates will need to go fishing. But that well looked more like a trap and the fish like monsters. It's a hunt for both sides. A special fishing rod can handle up to 5 tons of force, capable of pulling up those fish. The focus is on the bait, which must be the candidate's own blood. Though it may not seem like it, these fish are a delicacy and are only attracted by the finest blood. Those who don't attract any fish are already eliminated. But if a fish bites the rod and the candidate is pulled by it, they'll become fish food. A terrifying fate for them. It's as simple as that. The blood is the bait, and those who fail to attract fish are eliminated. The first test had officially begun. Looking down, he has no idea how he'll be able to pull one of those monsters. The rod is especially heavy. It must weigh around 45 kilos, and with the fish's weight, it could go up to almost 140. A participant managed to hook one of them. He pulled so hard on the rod that his clothes began to tear immediately. They were impressed by this strength. The woman says he's just a drug addict, but the protagonist doesn't understand, and she says he's just an ignorant boy. Swollen and well-toned muscles. Red eyes, nearly having a stroke. And a clearly disturbed mind, a sign he used fentanyl with crack. These stimulants increase strength, but as a risk, they can cause death or permanent madness. That guy definitely spent a lot of money on that, and he managed to catch a fish. Because if he becomes a dependent, it'll all have been worth it. She needs to work hard too, and told the boys to do the same. They finally understood what was happening. Some there had already caught their fish. They just need to try too. Then he put some of his blood into the container. He threw the bait into the lava and waited. After a few moments, he thought no fish was interested in his blood. However, some movement began to form in the lava, that it started to stir even more. Several fish began moving toward the same bait, but his rod line wasn't moving. He waits patiently for something to happen. He noticed a slight movement in his fishing rod. The lava below him was bubbling. It was getting more and more agitated. He had caught something. He had to hold the rod tightly. He almost fell into the lava, and the skinny guy had to help him with that. Already exhausted, he was very worried about his friend, and he was telling him not to let go for anything. He just needed to hold on a little longer. It made him use all his strength. It wasn't just one fish coming up, but several. They struggled to catch the fish. Finally, the creature had been pulled up by them. The effort was worth it. It had worked. The frail one celebrates as together they had succeeded. However, he quickly notices there was something peculiar. It wasn't just a single fish. Even the protagonist can hardly believe what he's seeing now. Angry, the fish doesn't want to leave its lava. Even so, he keeps holding onto the rod with all his strength. Once again, he's almost falling into the lava lake, and the frail one is struggling to keep his friend from becoming fish food. His effort is so intense that his entire face is covered in sweat. On the bait, several fish are coming. It's too much weight for them. He doesn't have enough strength to catch them all. His hands are nearly losing strength. His teeth are grinding from the force he's exerting. Faced with the struggle, he ends up slipping a bit closer to the lava lake. The girl watches as the candidate is on the verge of losing his life. Meanwhile, the fish thrash violently, attracted by the quality of the bait. The more time passes, the less strength they have. Knowing the danger, the frail one tells his friend to abandon the rod and save himself. However, he doesn't want to give up like that. Catching this fish is proving far more difficult than he imagined. If he doesn't pull now, he won't be able to later. His arms are so strained they're cramping. And all that effort has taken a toll on his body. He's losing consciousness, until his eyes starts to glow an intense scarlet. In his mind, a peculiar image has formed, and there's a body at the center, screaming as if in despair. Everyone, without exception, watches incredulously as he pulls all the fish up. His effort paid off. Meanwhile, Yu is in her room, looking out the window. Not bad at all for the guy she's had her eye on. Eagerly, she can't wait to devour him. The fools present don't believe what they're seeing. Those two boys managed to catch 6 fish at once. After the ordeal, they were exhausted. As they wash the fish thrash on the ground, one of them congratulates them, as he didn't think it would be possible to catch so many fish at once. He places his hands on one of them, but the protagonist tells him to back off. Those who were grabbing at the fish look at him. There's hostility in their eyes. Composing himself, he says they should stay away from his fish. They smile and tell him there's no need to be arrogant. He caught many, and it makes no sense not to share. The one with glasses said it was the result of their hard work, and they're trying to rob them. He knows they want to steal. They just haven't done it yet because they're unsure if the rules would allow it. Armed, they ask the butler about what they can do in this situation. He listens to the question carefully. They want to know if they can rob and kill at this stage, and he says that Mistress Yu values peace, so stealing's not allowed. But wowing as many fish and modesty has been a sign of chivalry since ancient times. Sharing with others is a gesture of humanity. Not to mention that if he doesn't do this, he will become a target. After hearing this, he gives a macabre smile. If they want his fish, that's fine. He threw a fish into his friend's lap. Everyone there is friends and they should help each other. Hearing this, the fools felt a bit happier. There's just one problem. He throws one of the fish back into the lava lake and said that by doing so, he was helping them since now there are more fish in the lake. Annoyed, they say that now he's a target, but Wang says that in the end, only one will win. Distributing fish to enemies is foolish, as they won't become his allies afterward. Once again, the background character says he's arrogant. However, Wang says there's even more arrogance to come. He lifts one of the fish with his hand. Anyone who kneels and calls him daddy will receive a fish as his offer. He told them to decide quickly because he's already thinking of throwing the fish into the lake, reminding them that only 20 would pass and that time is running out. Anyone interested should kneel immediately. Some are hesitant to do this, until the first pair of knees hits the ground. A chubby one among them calls him daddy. After doing so, he received a fish from the protagonist. Upon receiving the fish, he said he would kill him as soon as possible, but to him, none of that mattered. He wanted to know who else would kneel. They had already killed before and they had abandoned their humanity. Because of that, they should now become his little dogs. For him, since they no longer want to be human, that's the least they deserve. They threaten him, but he doesn't want to hear any crying or complaints. Only 3 more fish remain and he wants to know who else knelt. The others feel a bit apprehensive, unsure of what to do, until a few more people kneel before him. And each of those who caught a fish wanted to personally kill Wang. However, he didn't care about that. His friend thinks he went too far, but Wang says he took it easy. Just look into the eyes of these psychopaths. In each of their minds, there is only one goal: to become a member of Yu's family. They don't want to be human anymore, so there's no need to treat them humanely. In reality, they're all just a bunch of trash, and their stench bothers him. Looking at Wang, he noticed his friend seemed strange. It was as if he had become a completely different person. It was as if he had suddenly gone mad, not to mention he managed to catch all those fish. It even seemed like his body had changed. Blood, hot blood coming from the heart, moving forward inch by inch, immersing his entire body in that sensation. It makes it hard for him to control himself. All he desires now is a bit more blood. Humiliating themselves like that, yet unable to react, they're just useless cowards. There's no blood there, too pathetic. But there's an entire fish on the ground. What happened next left the participants stunned. Wang had pierced one of the fish with his bare hand, leaving the participants even more shocked. With his arm in the creature, he rummaged inside it. His eyes shone as if he was looking for something specific. Slowly, he pulled his hand out of there. In the palm of his hand was an organ. The participants watched everything without understanding, but the butler remained serious. Wang was consuming that organ. The audible crunches echoed through the room, and they began to say he was completely crazy. Doing that would end up destroying him, and the butler reminded them that time was running out. He smiled while those who didn't have a fish yet rushed. They're all idiots who haven't realized anything yet. That fish is something very valuable. Its flesh is extremely nutritious, and a single bite can greatly increase a person's strength, as well as their endurance. It's ridiculous that they don't know this, and he thinks Wang is doing it instinctively. He even tries to get his friend to eat a bit, as it's very tasty. If it's instinctive, that's a bit scary. He truly is a potential winner. One of the fools approaches the butler to ask a question. He wanted to know if he could do the same with them. The butler responded positively. Then, using his knife, he made some cuts to be able to consume its flesh. That left him impressed. Not everyone there was an idiot. Some could learn. Finally, they reached the target number of 20 participants. Many died in the process, and their goal now is to quit the competition. He thanks Wang as they can now leave safely. But Wang didn't care about what his friend had said. The young man is completely transformed. He's so focused on the competition that his friend finds him strange. He looks at the others still competing. Among them, there are several who are clearly unhinged. They're looking at Wang in a threatening way. Intimidated, he began to remove his jacket, throwing it to the ground as soon as he took it off. In a provocative manner, he pointed his middle finger at them. Wenxing says there's no need to provoke them, they started it first. Those people are in a group and most of the 20 already knew each other before the test. Indeed, there are also those who advanced solo. He should have thought of that. Some of them are armed as if they already knew the rules. Some humans, after becoming dependents, use their power to benefit their families. These people are wicked and organized. Wenxing thinks this has nothing to do with them, but Wang asks if he didn't look them in the eyes. No matter what the second stage is, they'll attack as if they're in a group. And they'll certainly try to kill him first. Frightened, the skinny guy suggests they quit now then. The fat guy says it's already too late. If any of them win, crushing them afterward will be like crushing an ant. And the fat guy is enraged for being humiliated with a fish. In front of the dependents, he's just a human of inferior race. They, on the other hand, are members of the same family, with noble blood in their veins, trained from an early age to become dependents. That's why they're unscrupulous and kill without any remorse. Once again, he tells Wenxing that these people are no longer human. A person who abandons their humanity doesn't deserve to continue living. They smile at the comment as they don't believe he can kill them. The long-haired one says this guy is crazy, and they should focus on the other lone wolves. Besides them, there are other people with insider information for the test. Because of this, they should be cautious with them. The chubby one turns to the long-haired guy and says he's the strongest among them and hopes he won't forget the true allies when he becomes a dependent. In the hall, they want to know what the second stage will be like. Regardless of what it entails, he tells Wencheng to quit immediately, but Wencheng is worried about his friend. He needs to continue because, win or lose, those clowns will come after him. But at least he'll kill all these people before they try anything. Hearing this, the boy with glasses said his friend sounds terrifying. In fact, he's scarier than the others. Soki asks what was wrong with him, and even he doesn't know what's going on, just that he feels his blood rushing. But there's an intense hatred growing, almost as if it's consuming him. The second stage is about to begin, and only 3 of them will be able to continue competing. The format of this competition now will be a lost tower, a building with 99 floors. Univerself will be waiting for them on the top floor, giving them a chance to become independent. There are elevators in the building, but the last 9 floors only have stairs. He says that Lady Yu is looking forward to seeing their bravery in this stage of the test. The candidates are very excited. On a piece of paper, they should write the number of the floor they want to start from between 1 and 89. Since they can choose the floor, the chubby one becomes thoughtful. If everyone starts from the first floor, there will only be chaos and Lady Yu wants to see some drama. For the heavyset one, the 89th floor is the only obvious choice, but everyone will pick that, which will make everything chaotic. He asks his companion how they should choose the floors. Gathered together, they try to think of a strategy to increase their chances. The one with glasses sees them as unbeatable and wants his friend to quit with him, but they won't do the stage together, for the simple reason of inferiority. Hearing this, the one with glasses can't believe they're starting to have internal conflicts. They are disunited. The chubby one asks for a fish from him instead of asking his own group for help. They're all selfish. They're already thinking about how to kill each other. Indeed, this seems quite plausible. Then he asked which floor Wang would choose, but he had already decided. On his note, he said he wants a random floor. Even the butler recognized that the boy is truly brave. Because of this, he might end up on the 89th floor, which will be complete chaos. Not knowing what to do, the butler asks one of his colleagues who says to go by the month. Since it was the 17th, that's the floor where he'll start the test. With Wencheng's withdrawal, everyone had chosen their floors and now Lang Yu is waiting for them. With a gesture of his hand, he started the stage. Circles began to appear beneath each of their feet, until an intense blue glow began to form. They're being teleported to the floor they chose. They immediately start to feel as if they're flying and everything gets dark. Finally, he's inside a room, and he feels that there's no more movement, so he must be still. He immediately opens his eyes to look around. He's on the 17th floor. Heading toward the stairs, he realizes that for now he's safe. However, a man watches him from the shadows. He realizes someone is hiding there. His eyes focus on that stranger. The man approaches Wang quickly. The guy is armed with a fire extinguisher. He tried to hit him but ended up missing. Not willing to stay and find out what happens, Wang begins to climb the stairs. However, the weirdo keeps following him. He prepares to use the extinguisher once again. But unexpectedly, Wang hits him with a kick right in the chest, making him fall down the stairs. He watches his attacker closely. He noticed the fire extinguisher isn't far from him. With it in his hands, he prepares to cause a bit of mischief. The fallen guy is terrified and begs him for mercy. He says he knows he's wrong and repeats several times that he has surrendered. This makes Wang set the extinguisher aside. He looks at the guy and slowly a red glow fades from his eyes. Still terrified, he realizes he's safe and that there must be something wrong with this young man. His body has been harshly trained to withstand impacts. But that kick was so strong that he felt as if his body had broken. It was pure brute force. Wang looks at him and asks if the guy isn't in one of those small teams and if there's nothing he wants to reveal now. Climbing the stairs, he's already heading to the 19th floor. With this brief interaction, he gathered sensitive information. In this team, there are 10 people divided into 5 groups, spread across floors to hinder others' progress. Reaching the 20th floor, he prepares as, according to the information he obtained, someone should be guarding it. He advances carefully up the stairs, but so far, he hasn't found anyone. With that, he ends up sighing in relief. Even as a team, the strategy is pointless. Those too far below stand no chance of winning. The last 20 floors are the most dangerous as almost everyone will be there. He keeps advancing, walking slowly. He doesn't want to be a dependent and he doesn't want to quit either, so he chose a random outcome. Rationally, he thinks it's a poor choice, as he's just an ordinary person. But his instincts make him want to reach the top and destroy them all. His head is confused with these feelings. His head aches and he doesn't see what is formed in his hand. He finally realizes that something strange is happening to him. His eyes tell him something's about to happen. His perception of things is different now. A stranger approaches him from above in a hostile manner. Behind him, another person is approaching. This guy is using a hypnosis technique thanks to his class as genetics, allowing him to dominate people with inferior genetics. With enough slaves, he'll impress Lady Yu. After making his attack leap, he grabs Wang by the shoulders and tries to use hypnosis on him to make him obey. But Wang looks back, red veins spreading across his face. This leaves that participant shocked. He can't tell what it is and his throat is already being squeezed. Wang thinks he's the reason his body is like this, but his attacker denies it. He says it was all a misunderstanding while getting hit and realizes his hypnosis didn't work on him, making him doubt his genes are inferior. Angry, he orders him to remove those red things immediately. Agonizing, he says he didn't do it because his hypnosis only subjects people to his control. To defend himself, he says it's useless to go against him and that they should form an alliance to keep climbing, but Wang strikes him again. In pain, the guy drops to his knees. Then he collapses, having lost consciousness. The red veins continue to spread and pulse across his body. He slowly brings one of his hands to his face, touching his lips. Then he leaned down toward the guy's neck. His mouth got closer, salivating intensely. That's when he realized he was doing something too unusual. Snapping back, he moved away from the body, shocked by his own actions. On the ground and scared, he can't say what he was doing. He breathes heavily while still watching the scene before his eyes. But looking again at the neck, he feels his vision change. His mouth starts salivating again, until he slaps his own face, thinking he must be going crazy. That makes him dash out of there down the stairs. Contrary to what was expected of the test, he's going down the floors. While running, he remembers the barbershop his father owns. Distracted, he steps wrong on his way down, falling face first onto the ground. After the impact, he lay there for some time. The impact was strong enough to knock him unconscious. The veins fade away and his hand twitches a little. He brings his hand closer to his face. Summoning his strength, he managed to stand up again. Now he looks up at all the floors he'll have to go through. The expression on his face isn't natural, and he says he's hungry. Very hungry, enough to want a snack right away. Someone reports to their boss that all preparations to ensure her safety are complete. The last attack was against the mayor, not her, as some thought. Ending the call, she asks how much time is left. The process is nearly over. No matter what they do on the 89th floor, the participants always start fighting in groups. Everyone fears running out of energy quickly but doesn't want to lose their place. Some rely on intellectual planning, and others on action and luck. There are those who pretend to be weak and kill their teammates, or those who hide their strengths until it's necessary to show them. And there are still those who rely on their strength from the beginning. With this variety of talents, you will have the best show possible to watch. Watching the footage, he wonders where Wang is. Then someone starts searching for him. They finally find him, and he's almost reaching the 89th floor, which is basically the eye of the storm. As soon as he arrives on the floor, violence is already underway. He just watches as more and more people die. In front of him, the others don't stop fighting. Between him and the access to the upper floors lies a battlefield, but he remains completely calm. Those in front of him are completely transformed. One of them tries to attack him with a metal bat, but he misses as Wang expertly dodges. Two others try to block his path, but they too can't even touch him. Wang passed through most of the conflict unscathed. There were only two more left between him and his destination. They immediately realize a third person is approaching. It's Wang who has reached them, casually passing between the two as if he had no business there. Furious, the long-haired one says only one person will make it up those stairs, and that person is him. The girl warns him, saying that knife is poisonous. But it was already too late. He had prepared the poison for her, but would spend his trump card on this clueless one. It's close to piercing him, but before it even touches him, Wang's silhouette has vanished, leaving the long-haired one in shock over what just happened. Because not only was his attack avoided, now his wrist is firmly held. Wang was there, and they can't understand how he did it. With a quick move, he disarmed him. Now he's the one holding the poisoned knife. Completely sadistic, he gives a big lick to the blood-stained blade. A shocking scene, leaving the other two confused. That's too little. It's hard to feed this way. The best ones are further up, and he's getting closer. Knowing there's something ahead, he's ready to devour whatever is there. Finally, he takes his first steps up the stairs. Behind him, the girl watches, still not understanding. Speechless, she watches this stranger continue on his path with a knife. Since she was no longer being blocked by the long-haired guy, she also climbed the stairs. He finally realized that two were already ahead of him. If he wanted anything still, he would need to climb the stairs too. But before he reached the stairs, he noticed people approaching him. They are the other candidates, who are completely insane. He doesn't know why they're out of control, as some of them were his companions. With one hand, he tries to hold onto the wall, but he is quickly overpowered by his attackers. His blood flies through the air like that of an animal. The lighting in the place changes and moonlight enters through the window. What's left in the hall are bodies and blood everywhere. They pile up at the base of the staircase leading to the top of the tower. A barrier has formed, blocking the passage there. He climbs the stairs in front of him, injured. In his hands, some fingers are incomplete, having become someone's snack. He needs to become a member of the Blood Clan. Someone tries to contact Yu, confirming for her that the three have been selected, and she thanks them for the previous courses, as she is very satisfied. Especially the last fight. Watching it was delightful. Despair and desire are the best seasonings. Now the three main courses are on their way, and she wonders what they will bring to her. She's truly excited for this and wishes for the party to continue. In the hall, pleasant music echoes. Some people are dancing, and masks cover their faces. A band with classical instruments plays the music. It's almost time. They're waiting for the participants. It's begun. They have arrived at the hall. Once inside, they are greeted for reaching the wandering ball. a large-scale family selection. The long-haired one wants to know what this is and where Lady Yu is. The voice tells him not to worry, as she is disguised as one of the women dancing. As her future servant, it's unacceptable not to recognize her, so she announces Chen Da. Then she says the name Hu Feng, and the last participant, Wang Ji. She congratulates them all for reaching the final test, which is to find Lady Yu among all those people. She might be the most beautiful among them, or perhaps the one wearing a mask behind the curtain, or even dressed as a waitress, serving drinks. There will be only one chance. Once they find her, they should ask her to dance, and the true Yu will lead them to the final room. But if they're unable to find the real one, they will become vampire food, eviscerated, and served as a feast for all. So they better not make the wrong choice and end up as cannibal fodder. This challenge terrifies them, except for Wang. The test has started, and they must choose their dance partners in just 30 minutes. Faced with this challenge, the long-haired guy doesn't know what to say. The girl smiles and says she knows what he must be thinking. Killing the other two would ensure his victory by finding the real one. It's a good idea. Showing him her weapons, she asks if he knows why she hasn't done it yet. Because she can't beat Wang, and she plans to use the long-haired guy as a shield to save her life. He curses her angrily, but she walks away, telling him to follow the rules as she's giving him a chance. But it's all part of her plan to kill him when it's over, along with everyone there, using the bomb inside her body. Traitor is an organization that eliminates those who have lost their humanity. The mayor saved her life, but not for long. Humans are controlled by the Blood Clan and have been compliant for a long time. But there's a small group of people who refuse to submit to them. They believe there will be a turning point and humanity's fate will change. Certainly, that's what she believes in. The women start getting anxious for them to try to find the real one because they want to feast on them. One of them grabs the long-haired guy, urging him to choose her quickly. They tease him, saying he's way too eager, and one girl calls him an idiot. They try the same with her, but she ignores them outright. However, placing her hand on her head, she starts feeling nauseous. From above, she's delighted with the feast, as with human protection laws, it's hard to hunt and create moments like this. Her servant wants to know if everything is okay since her potential dependents are there, but she doesn't care, as she'd rather share the meal with her own. They would never find her up there, and below, the place is filled with her clan's charm. An ordinary human wouldn't be able to keep their mind intact. Even so, she notices that one among them isn't so bad. She always feels he'll surprise her at any moment. At that moment, Wang felt like someone was watching him. This surprised Yu as she realized he had noticed. Immediately, he was already climbing the stairs to find her, until he managed to grab one of her arms. He had finally found her. She then asks if he's sure and if he isn't afraid he might have found the wrong person. But there's no mistake. Her taste is unique, and since he's hungry, he'll just have to eat her, unfortunately. Hearing this, she wants to skip the dance as she's very hungry too. In fact, she's curious about how he'll eat her, as she has high expectations. Lying on the floor, the long-haired guy realizes someone has already found the real Yu. It's impossible he can't accept that he lost. The girl also realizes Yu has been found, but the bomb hasn't gone off yet, and she wants it to explode soon. Then a hand reaches her waist. As she wonders why the bomb hasn't detonated, the person behind her says this is a very safe place that blocks all signals. In that place, there's no room for resistance. Shocked, she lets her weapon drop, while those surrounding her say she's a delicious little girl, and that there's still plenty of time to keep playing. Yu is lying in her bed with the supposed test winner. Full of wickedness, she says she's about to start, and he says he'll do the same. While on top of him, she admires his audacity, as he's the first to sleep in this bed with her. After the ceremony of grace, he will surrender to her body and soul and fall in love, becoming her plaything. She is the queen who can give him all the glory, and she bit his neck. She ended up loving his flavor. It was intense and impactful. The taste is splendid. She's completely flushed, practically falling for him. As she thinks about how incredible the sensation is, she can't hide the lascivious feeling filling her body, as she's quite shameless. She can't wait to be with him and make this moment special. She can even imagine him paying child support. Pulling him closer, she asked if he thought it was good. She thinks he's wondering why the grace ceremony hasn't ended yet, but she confirms that it's still early and that she has much more to do. She said she'd now enjoy him a little more, turning him inside out just to start. Now it was up to him to enjoy this lucky moment, as she would take it slow, very slow. However, she reminded him that he said he'd eat her eagerly. Placing her hands on his hips, she wanted to know if he was afraid to fulfill his promise. Quickly, he brings his hand to her face, and he said he would devour her, of course. He sank his teeth into her neck. The poor girl made a face as if she wasn't being bitten, despite her surprise. While he immobilizes her, she doesn't understand why he has fangs. She tries to struggle a bit, asking him to let her go. She makes a slight effort to break free, but she's not very committed. Her requests for him to stop are purely rhetorical. It's a strange feeling. She even thought she was being marked. This shouldn't be possible since she's the benefactor in this case. She is the master, but now she feels like a passive servant. As night falls, she cries out for him to get off her neck. Her trembling legs can do nothing in this moment. Her face is flushed, and she's weak. She tries to break free from him while her body quivers gently. The girl is overwhelmed. If there were problems in her life, she doesn't remember them, as all she wants now is to live in the moment. She has no idea what this wonderful sensation is. It was the greatest pleasure she's ever felt in her entire life. There was no precedent for this. She grabs him with her hands so he doesn't pull away. Finally, the bite is over. But she's insatiable and still wants more. She wants him to keep doing that with his mouth, since no one had ever bitten her before. The boy feels a bit dazed hearing this. Embarrassed for asking for more, she apologizes to him. He pulls away from her, and the girl props herself up on her hands. She calls him her dear master and presents herself as his faithful and loyal servant Ling Langju, wishing for him to continue the blessing ritual. She begs for him to go back to biting her, as it was wonderful. This makes him smile slyly, for thanks to his blood, his thoughts are clearer. Even if she's just an ordinary pureblood, he'll accept her. She thanks him, as she is now his slave and wants him to mark her. He makes it clear he won't write his name, as that's old-fashioned. He'll leave a blood mark since this is a special situation. He places his finger on her forehead, which makes the girl very happy. With a mark on her forehead, she thanks her master. She's never felt this good before and can't abandon her master now. She asks how he appears so weak, as she misjudged him because of it. Seriously, he tells her this isn't something she needs to know. Trembling, she apologizes for saying that. He needs to rest now, leave the rest to his body, as he is her other half and the object of her loyalty, to which his servant agrees without question. Not wanting to draw attention, he'll present himself as her dependent, and now he'll sleep as biting drains his energy. Closing his eyes, he falls into a deep sleep. She watches him sleep, enamored, and can't wait to have two masters with different personalities, since they must enjoy different positions. But the other has no memory of what happened and doesn't want to startle him, yet she thinks she has a good strategy for that. Gradually, he begins to wake up. His eyes open slowly. Rising from the bed, he feels a headache. Breaking out in a cold sweat, he realizes someone is behind him. She congratulates her dependent for being selected and asks if they should start causing some trouble. Looking at him, she asks what's going on. She wants to know if he doesn't want to have fun with her. The boy feels something is wrong, as he's still drowsy. He tries to leave, but the door doesn't open, and she says that if he doesn't come now, then she'll be the one to take the initiative. Apprehensive, he pulls his arm out of her reach. The boy is terrified of what might happen. Sweetly, she asks if he's rejecting her and if he doesn't want to become a member of the blood clan. This makes him clench his fist, fearful. But this only makes her more interested, as it seems he wants to resist until the end. He says he'd rather die than become someone's puppet and lose all his will. If that's what he thinks, he's mistaken. When someone stronger becomes the master, there's no resistance. There is only pleasure, the pleasure of finding a home, a safe harbor. One unconsciously desires to be with that person, to touch their body, to kiss them passionately, and to satisfy them at all times. She asked if he understood. Because of this, she doesn't want him to be so engaged in resisting and even has a suggestion. But she wants to know if he'd like to hear it. Outside, there are many photographers. A caravan of cars parks. In the news, it's reported that it has been 10 years since a pureblood selected a human to be her dependent, which is why there's so much excitement. At that dinner among authorities, the noble Langju will bring her dependent, and everyone wants to know who this fortunate one is. She steps out of her car with a servant assisting her. Others from her clan call her crazy for making a human her dependent. They do this to stabilize power by choosing humans from influential families. They even thought she was just having a bit of fun. But they're curious to know who this person is. This anonymous human who was chosen. Soon they are seen walking, almost like a couple. People take several photos, impressed with her. Some fans jump wildly, making security's job more difficult. As she walks to her destination, they shout her name. Those fools are impressed with what they're seeing. They wonder if that guy is really her dependent. He looks quite ordinary and doesn't seem to have anything special. They know he's only a Class C and his family owns a barber shop. They have no idea why he was selected. It must have been politics, as purebloods usually select vassals from the most traditional human families. That's why she traveled the country looking for her dependent and in the end, chose an anonymous weakling. This way he's disposable and she can select another when this one perishes. They're already seeing him as a consumable item, thinking he's mediocre. But she tells him not to lose courage and to look at the cameras with a smile. He'll be the headline of the day, and pretending to be her dependent will be his life's mission. He'll need to behave. But Smiley in this situation feels strange. He's the center of attention and can only take one step at a time. They continue walking toward the palace. An odd person greets her, and she thanks him for the invitation as well as the greeting to her father. He looks curiously at her dependent. He feels his ki overflowing, perhaps due to the ritual that just happened. An energy identical to his master's, he's definitely her dependent. An old man says young people act clever, which prevents them from reaching greatness, and she thanks her uncle for the advice. She tells him he's being watched. Many people are disappointed with her choice. As to everyone else, he seems weak. She pointed to the staircase and said someone couldn't wait any longer. The blood clan is rather inconvenient, and those are also dependents. Looking at him, she wonders what he'll do about it, and he doesn't know what to do either, as he's just an ordinary and powerless person. However, she says that if he's able to get rid of them, she'll reward him by teaching him how to obtain supernatural powers. This proposal shakes him because the only bad power is having little power. Genetically superior humans can develop this type of power. The two dependents approached them, offering to help her dependent. He had seen this with his own eyes before. It happened that time at school, and that other time as well. Meanwhile, he looks at the two who dislike him. He can't remember what happened, nor how he ended up in Langyu's bed. They tell him not to be a fool, as his master won't save him now. It's impossible. The night of dependence is something all of them must do once they join the clan. Customs and manners, everything must be completed that very night. Opening the curtains, they say that no one can stop the ritual established by the royal court, and they push him inside. Inside, someone calls him a rookie. The elder asks Wang to take a seat at the table, and to do so quickly. As he sits, she states that she's the senior and executive director of this night of dependence. Before the dance happens, the new dependent must go through this ritual, and with everyone gathered, it's time to begin. She asks everyone to start chanting a prayer with her. The composition is way too bizarre, and they all continue repeating what the elder says. They are dependents, the humble and loyal servants. That bizarre ceremony gives him chills. This is the rookie acceptance ceremony, and as she calls him by name, he ends up startled. A waiter approaches him. But what intrigues him is what's being served to him. They're about to have a meal, but he doesn't know what it is. Being washed, he hopes it's not made of people. Very apprehensive, he begins cutting the steak on his plate. However, he's still worried that it might be made of people. Before he has to make a tough decision, the waiter removes the plate in front of him and takes it to the head of the table, where the elderly lady is seated. She promptly takes a piece with her fork, putting it in her mouth voraciously. The boy simply watches the curious scene. It's aged lamb meat, and it's very tasty. The old woman bangs on the table, startling the boy. She starts ringing her bell during the sacred communion, thanking the great Blood King, for it's by his grace that they can all be there today. Nafrio is the name they all repeat as they toast. Next to him, a man asks what he's waiting for, as he should start eating right away. Those ingredients, besides being fine, are rare, and there are rules preventing human captivity. In the past, they used virgin blood and newborn flesh. He said he'd later take him to see some interesting things, as his master is close to Lingyu. Even if not everyone likes him, his personal stance is to help him. He said that to be dependent, he must withstand the stress, and beyond that, there are no major difficulties, as the master is also a protector. When it's all over, he'll take him to a peaceful place. The ritual is for him to see himself as part of a superior race and abandon his traces of humanity. And he pointed at him while drinking from his glass. He said he'd soon be addicted to the taste. It's simply madness. All of it. They're all crazy without exception. A night of madness and arrogance, a carnival built on human suffering. This situation is almost unbearable for him. It's almost time for the next stage. Then she asked them to bring her at once. Very excited, some ask if there will be a sacrament that day. Because of Langyu's status, they would do it even if it's somewhat against the rules. This only surprises him more as it's just a little girl. He doesn't know what they'll do to her, but the old lady asks them to begin. A light highlights the girl and Wang. Not knowing what to do, he positions himself defensively. Looking up, he wonders what's happening. The others are floating in the air. The old lady speaks loudly about the sacrament, but Wang still doesn't know what that means, and the girl behind him remains silent. He looks back and realizes she's standing. Her expression is cold, almost serene. In one of her hands, there's something resembling a dagger. He is stunned by what he's seeing. The girl prepares to cut one of her wrists. She begins making the cut, letting the instrument fall to the ground along with her blood. From above, the dependents watch this, starving. She offers it to Wang, who is slightly disgusted. With tears in her eyes, she asks him to enjoy it. Her wounded hands don't stop bleeding. The old woman urges him, saying he has to finish the ceremony quickly. But to the others, it's clear he's just a coward. The ceremony is meant to remind dependents that they are no longer human. If he doesn't complete the ritual, he won't be recognized by the Association of Dependents and will replace the human girl as the next sacrifice. These words affect him. A dependent is no longer human, and he asks if they actually want to drink that. To them, the rarer the blood, the better it tastes. Humans are merely the base in the food chain. Being independent doesn't prevent him from being someone's food, as the clan values the strongest. This makes him realize that even those who belong to the clan become food, they are always just that. They say he's correct, and even as a pureblood's dependent, he's no match for them. He should recognize his place, as they can turn him into a snack at any moment. This is a cruel truth. Dependents are just humans with a few privileges, but are still food. The whole ritual is also meant to show this truth to the initiates. He wipes the girl's tears. This is really annoying, and he wishes only one thing for all of them. He wants to crush every one of them without exception. Outside, Lingyu is being introduced to some people. A young man greets her. His family isn't pureblood, but they are 75% pure. He would like the chance to dance with her, but she promptly refuses. His mother says that she doesn't like dancing and that her son should invite her to sit and talk instead. The woman hopes her son will marry her to raise the status of their family. Rumors say that Langyu's father is losing his position at court to the emperor. By choosing a human to be her dependent, she's fighting against political forces. If she's smart, she'll accept the marriage. They are chatting about trivialities while the heavyset woman watches. He would like to introduce himself to her, but Lingyu is very distracted. She says she's concerned about her dependent. It might indeed be difficult for him, but he says she can call him here as the day's ceremony master to a friend of his. But her concern is with the other dependents as it could upset their respective masters. Intrigued, he asks if her dependent could do that to them. As with the recent ritual, they don't fully inherit their master's powers. It takes practice to develop that power, and everyone at the ceremony is a veteran dependent. Even if he were a genius, he couldn't do that. But she says he's not that. He's much more than a genius. He's the king himself. This surprises the young man, but she says she's joking and hopes to see the king of all 7 realms one day, the existence they cannot look at directly. Everyone wants to see the king, but only the governor of each province can do so, and he says that if she marries him, she might become the governor. Before she could answer, someone says something happened inside, something bad, and she says they should go together to see what happened. It seems her dependent may be in trouble. As some arrive there, they are surprised by what they see. Everyone is on the ground, and Wang is holding a girl in his lap. They want to know what he did to the others. But he did what any human would. Those traitors deserve to die. So he beat every one of them without exception. Not a single one was spared. Those traitors went off to find out if God exists. Seeing the bodies on the ground, he started to think. It was like last time, his head is very confused. The only clear thing is the sensation of his fists hitting something. It's all too strange for him. He hadn't thought about it before, but it was odd when he managed to catch the fish. Just like the bite marks he saw on his neck, or that irrational power he possesses. He wonders if he's still human. One of them is extremely angry about what Wang Ji did to the dependents there. But Lanju steps forward and tells the elder to behave himself in front of her. However, he's furious because his dependent was brutally beaten. Others say it was just a fight between toys, and that his dependent couldn't subdue a rookie who only recently evolved. Looking at her, he swallows his anger. The dependent, still in agony, says she's been with him for 50 years and has done a lot for him. Even so, he ends her life calling her a useless thing. After that, he looked to Lanju to see what she has to say about it. She pretends not to understand, and the elder says she has no control over Wang. Now it's up to her father, Kai Yu, to resolve this personally. The castle had been sealed from the outside, and with more vampires who had lost their dependents, they'll wait for Kai Yu's arrival. Everyone wants to meet her father, and the dinner was also prepared for her to go there. She picks up her phone as they're so eager to find him. She tells him to come right away as she's suffering abuse from various people. Lying down on the sofa, she told them to wait for her father's arrival, which made them quite anxious. Then she called Wang over to her. She wants him to give her a massage, which surprised him greatly. He placed the girl in the armchair and positioned himself near his master, who had her back to him. Touching her lightly, Lanju asked him to do it with more strength. This made her very happy as it was very comfortable for her. Seeing the scene, the police chief felt frustrated, and the man beside him commented that not long ago, he was on a blind date with her. He remarked that even though her father faced political resistance, he's still a pureblood noble. The conflict is escalating, almost reaching the king's scale. Even together, they stand no chance against the superiors, but if they divide them, it's different. Imagining a pureblood makes their mouths water. Wang feels uneasy, and Lanju wants to know what he's thinking. In her mind, she wishes the massage were even more intense. She enjoys seeing Wang shy or embarrassed by what she does. That is a private space of consciousness between dependent and master, created through her spirit. Outside, no one knows what's happening. Hearing this, he feels distressed as he didn't think he was her dependent. He wants to know if she bit him and if he's still human. Furious, he thinks she's lying to him. This made him feel sad, not just because of the lie, but for no longer being human. But she moves toward him. Her father is arriving, and with his strength, he will soon uncover everything. Wang needs to hurry and start cultivating immediately. Even she had to grow stronger, but Wang wants to know what kind of cultivation she's talking about. He asked her to get off him as there are several people watching everything, and that she's completely crazy for doing something like this. But Lanju is completely intoxicated by a lascivious sensation. Ruthlessly, she presses her body with her ample attributes. Wang feels that the Soviet-style attack is brutal, and his defenses are ineffective. With one hand, she asks if he's feeling the warmth. He senses the energy being guided, and it leaves him feeling unstable. Now it was up to him to try to control that energy. She tries to guide him on how to handle this energy like a leaf, telling him to make it concentrate. That is his potential, existing within each one. The act of becoming stronger is about increasing the content of this leaf, understanding rules, oneself and others, which contributes to victory or defeat. On his leaf, nothing is written, which is why he can only use brute force. Full of mischief, she says that if he gives her a kiss, she'll teach him how to use the leaf, but he guards his innocence. Closing his eyes, he focuses on how to inscribe powers. Imagine he held a pen in his hands. Immediately, the large pen began to touch the paper. The touch of the instrument on the paper began to release intense energy. It started to glow, as if shining even brighter. This left him extremely surprised. To his complete confusion, what was once a leaf had turned into a refrigerator. This led him to despair, but his companion says that for a kiss, she'd explain everything to him. Even if he doesn't know why it turned into that object and not something else, at least there was a change. The power within him, even if limited, seems somewhat controllable now. Watching him, the vampires can't stop finding him adorable. People's power pages generally have the same source, sometimes even following a pattern. She had never seen a three-dimensional object representing it while he tries to open the refrigerator without success. It's truly astonishing, and she increasingly recognizes that he's worthy of being her master. However, she has no idea what a refrigerator is. Looking at the object, she thinks it might be somewhat dangerous. Meanwhile, outside, the others watch him irritated. He seems a little different since he started the massage. Outside the mansion, a storm forms with several red lightning bolts. Filled with fear, they notice that someone is approaching. An intense glow can be seen in the sky, and a gray mane quickly closes in on them. The approaching figure crashes hard into the ground, causing a wave of destruction in the area, throwing a few unsuspecting people far away. The newcomer is Caillou, the vampirus' father. Not only did he destroy the shield made by the Grumbler, but he also destroyed his palace, but Caillou didn't even notice there was a barrier there, as it was as fragile as paper. As for the castle, he feels no regret because it was too ugly and didn't suit his aesthetic preferences. The same goes for the people around, are so ugly they make his eyes bleed. Hearing this, the Grumbler asked him to be more respectful, while the plump one thought he was toxic, though not to this extent. Being direct is also part of his style, and he wants to leave that unpleasant place, so the vampiress calls out to her father. She embraces him warmly, and he says that seeing his daughter even sweetens his mood. As he hugs her, he notices something. The taste of her body had changed. There was something in her blood, and hearing this made her worried. He wants to know what happened to his perfect princess, and she quickly responds that she has a dependent. Pulling Wang close, she says he's her dependent and instructs him to say hello to their father, though Wang doesn't understand why he should call him that. Looking at the young man, he places a hand on his shoulder. It was simply too unattractive, making his eyes hurt. While they converse, the Grumbler says he's fed up and that they're not there to entertain Caillou's family. Her dependent disrespected them, and if he doesn't compensate them, he shouldn't consider leaving that place. As he says this, the rest of the building behind him begins to collapse. Looking around, they realize there are no buildings left, only ruins. They now wish to change the subject after that. His battle rank is Xingyo 2. Those unimportant ones on his side are in rank 5. But they say 2 fists can overpower 4 hands, and Caillou would pay for his arrogance that night. He begins to levitate in place, smiling mockingly. Looking at them, he says these fools don't know how far the sky is from the earth. From the tip of his cane, energy begins to gather. An intense energy condenses around him, making even the stones rise to the surprise of those present. He throws them toward the bystanders, who panic. To defend himself, the complainer summons a protective shield. But the Senpei stone is too powerful and crashes violently against it. Close by, the movement is so fast they can't keep up, and soon they're struck by the stones brutally. The action was swift, and now they're sprawled on the ground, powerless. They had lost even with a numerical advantage and couldn't use their abilities. Indeed, the power of pure blood is astounding. If numbers mattered, the Blood Clan would have been wiped out years ago. It reminded them to stay humble, as half-bloods would never match them. Even in defeat, they threaten him, saying the Emperor will know what happened there. Then his daughter suggests they kill them now so no one has a chance to say anything, which terrifies them. But they're so ugly that doing so might cause him nightmares, so he prefers to avoid it. And he said that if they want to tell the Emperor, they should feel free. He used to hang out with the sub-Emperor Changsim and beat him up when they were younger, which makes the ugly ones angry with his remark. Wang was there but was concerned about the health of the girl he had rescued. She had no major injuries as Caillou had restrained his own strength. He said that one of the few beautiful things among so many ugly people should be protected. He surely sympathized with her hair as it is gray. Some who carry cameras saw Caillou leave with his daughter after beating up those present. They immediately spread the news about the incident, the fight between the nobles, and hinted at the identity of the new dependent. She wants to know from Wang if things were settled, and he said yes. The girl knew where her house was and would head there. He offered to accompany her, but she said it wouldn't be appropriate and hurried off. Lang Yu thought he would also run away, and he even considered it, but thought he'd be caught by her, which she confirmed he would be. He wants to know what's happening with his body, but she told him not to rush because her father wants to see him. Seated, he awaits the arrival of the humble dependent. He asked if he had already decided between life and death, but Wang was surprised by this as he didn't know what he was talking about. He must choose between those 2 masks, because if he has to look at his ugliness one more time, someone might die. He preferred the darker one, which immediately relieved Caillou. He asked his daughter if she really likes him, and if it's an inseparable bond, which she confirms, so they're asked to go together, but Wang doesn't know where they're going. They're heading now to the sacred city. He also has to attend a meeting of the 7 emperors, and his daughter wants to know if everything will be okay, but he tells her not to worry. Inchang and Kasai grew up together and are like brothers. Rumors are just rumors. He warned them to prepare as they'll be leaving in 5 days. Alone with her, he asked more about what happened. He wants to know if they have an established relationship, and she asks if he still wants to lead an ordinary life as he seems to have understood nothing. She'll give him 3 days to think, and after that, she wants an answer. Seeing her leave, he forgot to ask more about the changes happening in his body. While he was thinking, his cell phone started ringing. As soon as he answered, he heard a cry for help. It was Wensheng's voice on the other end. After receiving that call, he runs frantically through the streets. The dependence building is empty. No one is there. He knocks on the director's door, asking about Wensheng and if he's home. Soon he realizes the door is unlocked. He enters, asking if anyone is there and if the director is home. There's no one and no sign of struggle or resistance, but he ends up stepping on a portrait lying on the floor. It was a photo of his friend next to the director. Looking closely, he becomes increasingly certain that something had happened. The possibilities begin to terrify him. At the police station, the officer informs him they can't accept the case. Since they disappeared just a few hours ago, there's no evidence that something happened, even with the call, as adults can be unreachable for a few hours. It was the middle of the night, and he was advised to sleep, but Wang insists that something should be done. Moreover, they are the police that serve the clan directly. Civilians are not their priority, and they'd only prioritize it if it were a request from a clan member. Hearing that justification deeply infuriated him. But soon he was informed that he is a dependent of Langyu, and he told his secretary he should have been informed of this earlier. Immediately, he changes his tone with the young man and asks him to take a seat. Wang tells him to start working right away, and the director says he will personally lead the investigation. Then the secretary whispers a few more things to him. He apologized, saying he can't do anything about it, as it's an internal clan matter, and he has no authority to interfere. They don't know anything about this and must remain unaware. But all influential families sent their prodigies to be selected as dependents, along with all their important data. He calls his father, who answers, frustrated as he just wanted a bit more rest. Hanging up, he's relieved his father is safe, but doesn't understand why they attacked Wensheng and not his family. The butler approaches him, explaining that it happened because Wang's family is now protected. Unable to attack him directly, they turn to Wensheng's family. Not fully grasping the significance, he's told that those families live for that purpose and Wang had closed their opportunity. As a result, he's already deeply resented for doing this. They'll discuss it later. The most important thing now is rescuing his friend. They already know the address they were taken to and await Wang's order to destroy the entire family responsible for this. His identity now is a weapon, and if he wishes, he can use it to his advantage. So if they ask Wang what to do now, if he'll permit it. Shyly, he says he's going to save people. Inside a house, an old man mentions that the emperor asked Yu to return, agreeing that he's far too arrogant. He's frustrated that Langyu chose a nobody, someone with no family tradition, as his dependent, which has harmed their family. But they capture his friend, who participated in the selection, and he's been taking a constant beating. The woman tells her master to rest and prepare for the surprise meal they'll have the next day. They immediately realize things have become complicated for them. Someone is calling, and that's definitely not good news. An uproar breaks out inside the mansion due to the unexpected visit. In the sky are Wang's underlings. The butler's order is clear: kill. As they enter the already destroyed place, the old man tells them not to come any closer. It was merely an issue between dependents, and now they've entered his house and killed people. He only invited them for tea, and gripping the director's neck, says that when he's scared, his hands can slip. However, the director is injured and coughs, weakened. Wang is desperate, and the butler states that the director's vitality is compromised. He won't last beyond this night. The woman tells them not to come any closer, as Wang is merely a dependent while she has connections with real vampires. And they should at least speak to Langyu before doing all this. But the masters aren't here and the dependent is in charge, so all she can do is beg him. The only one capable of showing mercy here is him and no one else. Now they realize they're in real trouble. Immediately, the old man bows multiple times, pleading for mercy, but his servant says he shouldn't do this for his family's sake. But the old man knows that if he doesn't do it, people will die. He then returns them both to Wang, presuming they're good friends since he helped him during the test. He will lead him to Wensheng, but Wang made it clear that if his friend doesn't survive, heads will roll. He takes them to a door, as he's the only one who can open it, but assures them the friend is safe. At a kind of sensor, he places his eye to be scanned. After that, the door opens before them. Humbly, he requests that Wang and his group go ahead. But Wang insists that the old man will guide them, to which he agrees. Soon, he encounters something that leaves him surprised. Wensheng is lying inside a coffin. He rushes to his friend. However, the old man, very sly, presses a button on the wall. The place is now sealed with them inside. With only them inside, they assume Wang is in trouble, and the butler requests an urgent alert to be sent to Langyu. He's isolated with someone who's cultivated up to the 3rd level. The situation is not simple. Even so, he smiles confidently. It's for him to die, yet he has a strange feeling about it. Inside, the old man serves himself a drink. The door is massive and will take time to open. When he does things, he enjoys surprises, and this is his first surprise. Wang is already furious with the old man's audacity. Ignoring him, he runs toward his friend. He tries to wake him from his sleep. He soon noticed there was a bite mark on his neck. The second surprise would be this, to make the son finish off his own father, since he had now become his dependent. It would be the 3rd surprise, which would be sensational. Even though his plans were thwarted, it wasn't all in vain, as he enjoyed the expression on Wang's face. Snapping his fingers, he says it's time for the climax. He ordered his dependent to wake up and put on a new performance for his master. He slowly opens his eyes. The old man wants to know whose dependent is stronger, his or Langju's. He tries his best to bring his friend back to his senses, but he must dodge his attacks. Being careless, he ends up being superficially hit. The old man says it's useless, as he's his dependent now and only follows his orders, and he commands Wencheng to tear apart the one in front of him. Confused, Wang remembers all the moments he had with him. This made him even more outraged by the situation. Because of these guys, the world is now a big trash can. The old man says humans are nothing more than cattle to them, and that's how things are. Becoming a dependent is the best chance of their lives. If he kills him here, there won't be any problems, as he's just a dependent and can simply hand over Wencheng's head as payment. There's nothing he can do now. He instructed him to use the technique inherited by becoming a dependent, as it would be enough to kill him. Wang watches in horror as his friend hurts himself. By inflicting harm on himself, he's now 300% faster and stronger, a powerful boost that will last for 1 minute. Approaching swiftly, he strikes Wang. The old man celebrates, thinking he managed to resolve the situation. He praises his dependent, as it was wonderful to watch. Even so, there are tears in his eyes. Finally, he had stopped moving. Now Wang can hold him with his hands, and he told Wencheng not to worry, as it will all be over soon. The old man's incredulous, seeing that his dependent will be bitten by Wang. Immediately, he bites him near the neck. The old man laughs uncontrollably, as it's impossible for a dependent to suppress the influence of someone like him. Even so, the bite continues. Before this, he knew he wouldn't be able to catch Wencheng because he's too fast. So he went to his internal space and encountered the fridge once again. He can't open it, so it might be too late. While trying to open it, he found Langyu there, to his surprise. If they want and aren't too far away, she can be there. In fact, only he can have such a powerful space. Her space is vast, but she still doesn't know the limits of Wang's capacity. He doesn't know what to do, and she says she could help for a kiss. Stating that the matter is urgent, she says she was just joking with him. She can't open the fridge but can tell him how to handle the situation, as the person fighting him became a dependent of someone else. So he should grab him and make him his own dependent. Once he's a dependent, the result is irreversible. That way, he can at least free his friend from the old man's control. She'll teach him how to do it, and it'll be up to him whether he does it or not. It won't be difficult for him, as she's a pureblood. But actually, for him, it will be nothing difficult. Approaching, she said he needs to hurry. Either he marks him or he kills him. He must make a choice. The next morning, he tells his father he had arrived. He said he would make the food since his father is practicing calligraphy, but asked him to take care of his health, and his father asked what he thought of his calligraphy. Approaching, he said it's wonderful as always. He wonders if his father doesn't get tired of writing the same thing over and over, and that he should vary, as he always writes human, earth, and sky. But he says the laws of the earth and sky are in danger, and they should never forget the meaning of being human. His son was intrigued, and to avoid explaining, he said he would do the dishes instead of him. But he won't allow his father to do it, as he's the director. On the calligraphy desk, there's a picture of the two of them together. The frame's glass is broken. Veins bulge all over his body as the process takes place. He feels some pain and mental confusion. As the process progresses, he screams. Watching everything, the old man has no idea what kind of energy this could be. It's unbelievable. He can't allow the process to continue. He threw his glass on the floor and ordered his dependent to kill Wang. He tries to get closer to the two. With his wing, he attacks something. Only after the dust settled did he realize he hadn't hit anything. Looking back, he saw his former dependent holding Wang. He gently places him on the ground. His expression is calm and serene. On the other side, the old man smiles confidently. However, he begins to cough uncontrollably. The connection with his dependent had been severed. He has no idea how this could have happened. Even so, the dependent is no match for him, as he was born noble and was never human. As he says a few things, he sees a flash in front of the young man. For a moment, he's taken aback. There is a slight smile on his former dependent's face. The old man had been attacked and didn't even realize how it happened. His blood drips onto the floor. He is prostrate and powerless, unable to understand what happened. Finally, he falls defeated. Wencheng goes to his new master to help him. He carefully approaches his face. What does it mean to be human? And he remembers the portrait with his father. Observing everything, he realizes it's finally over. Seeing his friend getting too close, he wants to know what this guy thinks he is. He can only observe what his friend did. He's very strong now. With incomprehensible speed, he finished off the old man. If this is Langju's power, she is indeed a frightening woman. On the other hand, he looks at his hand stained with blood. Once again, he hurts himself. Desperately, he asks what he's talking about, and she says it's self-destruction. Probably, he no longer has the desire to live. As he is unconscious, Wencheng will act according to his wishes. For a moment, he contemplates the possibility of ceasing to exist. Wan hopes he won't do that. He tries to reach him within the space he created. Holding him, he tries to make him listen. Now the three are gathered in this place created by the master. Once again, he tells Wencheng to calm down and listen to what he has to say. Before he could say anything more, his friend had moved away, promptly bowing before him. Once the spiritual connection was reestablished, obedience to the master took over. No matter what he asked of him, it will not be denied. This is the nature of dependent, but he doesn't want his friend to stay like this. He wants to know if there's any solution for it. so that he can return to being the same as before, just as Wang is, even as Lang Yu's dependent. Saying this, he feels a bit saddened. The girl gives a wide smile. Wang is still the same, and he wants the same for his friend too. Seeing this, she is pleased. Having a more human master makes her heart race. Only through a marking will he have more self-control, as he was only bitten. But he has no idea what a marking is. Hearing what it is, he's perplexed by the possibility. She doesn't want him to refuse, as it would be beautiful to see for the more daring. Trying to escape, he places his hand on the refrigerator door. Unexpectedly, it decided to open with this touch. Inside, the only thing, there's a small ice cube. After all, that's what one would expect to find inside a refrigerator. So he decides to examine it more closely. The ice cube begins to glow intensely. Then beams of light emanating from it hit his dependent's forehead. Finally, the marking on him was made. He asks if his friend is okay, but he also wants to know what that pattern is on his forehead. Seeing it left Lang Yu very angry. Before he could answer, she left. Gradually, Wenqing regains consciousness. He touches his face and becomes emotional over everything that happened. At the moment, he's worried about what might have happened to his father. To reassure him, Wang says the director is outside. As soon as they leave the room, the young man goes to his father and hugs him. He apologizes to his father for what happened. Mourning fills the place as his father had now become a memory. A lot has happened. The director passed away, his friend is now his dependent, and he realizes he's no longer human. The butler says the director's body has been collected and is being taken to the cemetery. By law, people like him can't be buried in cemeteries, but he can do it now that he's Lang Yu's dependent. Thoughtfully, he addresses the butler directly. None of this was by chance. It was a trap, and he had realized it even before entering, which is why he stayed outside. But he says he's being misunderstood, and he wants to know why Wang is leaving there in such a hurry. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt a strong discomfort in his chest. Impossible, and that's the arrow of punishment developed by Lang Yu. He can't believe he's being targeted by it, as even though he's not her dependent, he's been loyal since he's known her. This was just a small matter. It's hard to believe she would side with someone so weak, but she tells him that this time it's just a small punishment. No one can make her master unhappy, no matter who they are. They're at the cemetery now, and Wenqing is there. Turning his face, he looks at his friend. Wang notices there's an urn in his hands. He didn't want his father buried in a place full of monsters, so he decided to bring him home. Indeed, it's a better decision. Finally, the two arrive at the director's old house. The door is open, and no one is there to greet them. Wenqing tells his friend to sit wherever he likes. He'll make some tea for them and suggested black tea since his father liked it a lot. He used to pick the leaves himself and would hike through the mountains to get them. But he's not a tea drinker and doesn't know what to do with it all. Remembering his father, he cries once again. The grief is still too intense for him to feel okay. Wang sees this and feels sad for his friend as well. He assumes it's all his fault. If he had kept his powers hidden, none of this would have happened. He doesn't know when he became a monster and responsible for all of this, but his friend asks if it was really his fault. That's not how he sees it, and for him, he feels nothing but gratitude. For giving him power, he can now avenge his father. Besides, if Wang's a monster, then so is he. Then he looked at his father's calligraphy paper, where it says humans, earth, and sky. Vampires and dependents are people but with different traits. In the end, they're all human. The only thing that truly separates them is each one's own humanity. If there's still humanity, then they're not monsters. He was already thinking about this. Before, he was weak and didn't even know what to do with his future. Now he has a clear goal in mind. He just hopes his friend won't stop him from doing this. After all this, he has become his master. Dependents always obey their masters, and he assumes that must be his friend's wish. To use these powers to take down all those monsters devoid of humanity. Hearing this, he realized Wenqing had completely changed. Taking advantage of the strength he now has, they can simply respond with force. That's why, from now on, he's going to work hard. He'll dedicate himself and start by writing a thesis to learn all the weaknesses vampires possess. Apparently, he hasn't changed much and is still an exemplary student in a way. He asked him to stay there for a few days and that, no matter the ideas he has, they'll talk about them once they're stronger. He heard this with enthusiasm, as weak soldiers don't win wars, and his success also depends on the strength of his superior. In other words, Wang needs to train hard so both can become even stronger. This way, they'll perfect personal skills to the point of being able to take down a vampire with a single punch. Leaving the building, he wonders if he'll stay there studying all night. However, he needs to perfect his skills as soon as possible. He feels there's something powerful in his body but doesn't know how to activate it or even use it. That ice cube also remains a mystery. There are many questions, and he truly hopes to help his friend. But he has something to do now. He remembered that Lang Yu gave him 3 days to give her an answer. The world is dominated by vampires, and as a human, there's no avoiding them. The only way out is to fight and get stronger, no matter the cost. It's the only way to protect his family and gain his freedom. Picking up the phone, he called Wenqing, asking for copies of all the materials he could gather. At dawn the next day, the whole city was shocked as they thought Caillou had killed yet another vampire family. That behavior disrespected the king. In court, the king is reading a petition addressed to him. They're calling for Caillou's impeachment for treason. Reading it fills him with anger, and 3 days the 7 kings will meet. He ordered them to inform Yu that he must attend. In the hospital, Wang takes his father to care for his health. He sighs as his father is resistant to taking care of himself. Even though he promised to accompany her to the capital, he's worried because he thinks she has some trick up her sleeve. Despite being her dependent, he has self-control, and besides, she helps him a lot, which is strange. Happy to leave for the capital, he will leave Wencheng to care for his father in his absence. Then he sees the silver-haired girl. She's the girl he saved that night. A heavyset man approaches, saying this is the last session, and that afterward, he'll take her to eat something nice. That sweaty, enormous person looks familiar. The big guy is the mayor of the town. He can't believe this man could be her father. If he is, it's a genetic oddity. Beside her, the mayor recognizes Wang, and the girl says this is the young man who saved her. Her arms are still bandaged, and he thanks her for telling him this. He only found out what happened to his daughter later, and because of his position, he couldn't thank him personally. But now that he's here, he does so. He didn't expect this girl to be the mayor's daughter. Wang wants to know why they targeted his daughter, and he says it's due to the impulsive desires they have, since they are vampires and he is merely a human unable to protect his own daughter. He watches the mayor pull out some papers. Approaching, he whispers to him that he shouldn't go to the capital. Because it's a trap, the king wants to get rid of Yu. Leaving the hospital, he bids farewell to the girl he saved. However, he carefully watches the mayor, remembering what he said about going to the capital. The mayor's warning was clear. This trip would be dangerous. Knowing this, he needs to inform Lanju about what he discovered. He sent her a message about what he heard. If they go, they need a plan to protect themselves. She replies in a friendly manner. She's happy he's worried about her and wants to know if he missed her. This isn't the reaction he expected to such serious news. She wants to cuddle with him all night and do some intimate things if it's not too much to ask since she has needs. Reading that made him break out in a cold sweat. On the other end, she eagerly asks him to come to her room. His father, who read everything, advises him to do these things in moderation. He says it's not what his father is thinking, but the bald man has lived a long time and used to put his bald head to work when he was younger. Now that he's a dependent, the salon is very successful, and he believes his son's beauty is enhanced by the haircut he's had since childhood. He needs to get back home because he's now famous on the internet, and he offered to help his father, but he refused. He's not oblivious to everything and knows his son is mingling with high society people. Knowing this, he wishes him the best and happiness. No matter what happens in the future, as his father, he'll always be waiting for him in that little shop. Happy with these words, he promises to do his best. Taking out his phone to snap a photo, he asks him for one more favor. A proof that he's his father, and along with this, he'll put childhood and teenage photos of him in the salon to boost his popularity. He'll put it in a place where everyone can see, and Wang does nothing since it makes his father happy. The truth is, his father must also be worried, and to ensure his safety, he needs to become even stronger. Lanyu didn't seem bothered by the warning. She probably already knew about it, as she's indeed a woman one shouldn't mess with. There's no way to avoid the dangers of the capital. He just wishes there was a simpler way to get stronger. Someone hands him a pamphlet advertising their martial arts gym. The young woman asks if he's interested in it, and there he goes to the Liangshan gym. Judging by the equipment, it seems like a standard gym. In this world of people who have abilities, he wonders if it's worth training in anything. He saw two people sparring in boxing. One of them just lost a tooth in this little game. It's truly intense. This is an old-school gym. The guy in the ring looks at him and says his face looks familiar. He asks if he'd like to step in for a friendly round. He stays up there waiting for an answer. Wang says he can't because he's busy, and the guy says fighting is the first step to getting stronger. If he doesn't have the courage to fight, he won't get stronger, and is just a coward. Seeing that he's being provoked, he wants to know what happens if he wins or if he loses. It's impossible for him to win, and as soon as he loses, he'll have to buy his course on how to get stronger. He says he's a good teacher, but Wang says he found him a bit weak. Then he said that if Wang beats him, he'll teach him for free, but Wang replied that if he wins, he wouldn't have anything to learn from him. The new deal is that if he wins, his teacher will teach him to fight. His teacher is Master Xu, a specialist in the 1,000-year death technique. Watching all of this, it almost seems like a marketing strategy. The girl says he must be desperate for a student, and if he loses, Master Xu will beat him to death. Another guy says that's true, and he's been waiting in line to be taught for months, thinking that skinny guy has no potential at all. The more he listens to the people there, the more it seems he's fallen for a scam. Besides, they're all humans here, and they probably aren't capable of dealing with a vampire or a dependent. Maybe the Academy's purpose is just to help people lose weight. Since he insisted so much, he's going to fight, as he's also interested in gauging their skills. But win or lose, he wants him to help him take a physical aptitude test and not charge for it. He agreed, as he thought the request was too simple, but what he really wants is to get one more student since he has so few. Finally, the two are on the ring. Wang picks up the gloves he's going to use. He doesn't know what those numbers mean. They're sensors that measure punch strength. They'll use them since the kid wants to test his physical abilities. The protective equipment is very good. Even the ring ropes are made of steel. This academy is for humans with abilities who are stronger than average people, hence the durable equipment. The girl asks them to get ready. Outside, people start cheering. Now Wang is completely focused. He managed to dodge the first punch, but his opponent pushes off with one foot. Going airborne, he prepares to strike again. He lands a blow that Wang blocks. A punch of 290 is enough to break a wooden board. He continues attacking and his punch strength is increasing. Outside, their master starts watching the sparring session and tells his pupil to use the secret technique. Master Xu's presence rouses the crowd, but he thinks if he uses it, the newcomer won't be able to defend himself. However, Xu says he doesn't pay attention to things, which is why he hasn't improved. He says he still hasn't realized it. Meanwhile, Wang continues holding his ground. Despite the powerful punches, the newcomer doesn't show signs of being worn down. Charging energy in one of his hands, he's ready to unleash his special move. The power of his punch rises to 388. Even so, Wang wants to see how strong it is, and hopes to be able to block this one too. The impact destroyed the ring's floor. He missed Wang, who dodged. Irritated, he ordered the newcomer to stop dodging. He didn't want to dodge, but he doesn't yet know how to use his abilities, so all he can do is dodge. Outside, the master tells him to imagine a milk carton with a straw in it. He should absorb everything into his stomach and then channel that energy into his limbs. The analogy is terrible, and gets distracted thinking about it. However, the master tells him to concentrate and do it that way. He decides to give those tips a try, but what he sees is the fridge. If it's similar to what he said, he could try making a hole in it. A straw is too gentle. It needs to be an electric drill. He pushes the tool against the door until he manages to make a small opening. Now there's a bit of energy coming out, even if it's very little. Still, this time he feels he's able to control it. He channels it and absorbs it, wondering if that's how it's supposed to feel. For the first time, he felt an energy transfer. Outside, they can't believe the newcomer is so talented. Even his opponent is surprised, wondering if the fight should continue. The master says he has to strike with full force now. His pupil follows the command and advances once again. He strikes the newcomer, but he blocked his blow with ease, and without using any tricks. This time, it's Wang's turn to attack. The master tells him he needs to adjust his stance, lower his left hand, and strike. Just as he was told, he executes the attack. His opponent is terrified of what might happen. The strength he had in his hands made no sense. Those watching are utterly incredulous. On the glove, it's clear that his strike has a power of 688. They shout enthusiastically. It's unbelievable. The rookie landed a powerful punch as if it were nothing. Then he turns to the master and asks if he is Xu, the one they're talking about there. Inside the gym, he has a better conversation with Master Xu. He thanks him for the earlier advice and asks to be taught, while Xu's student says he's impressive. Xu says the young man is indeed talented, unlike his arrogant student. He noticed he has innate abilities he can't access, and without knowledge, he can only hit his opponents with brute force. He agrees with the assessment, and the student praises his master, adding that his classes are expensive, and he should be rewarded for bringing a new student. But Xu says he's already old and doesn't want more students, which makes his disciple question when he made that decision. However, given his potential, he would accept him as a student, and hearing this, the disciple celebrates as he'll receive his commission. With this, he said that Wang would be his last disciple. He won't spare any effort because he expects Wang to be one of humanity's pillars in the future, and the young man accepts his challenge. The secretary congratulates them both but asks the new student to complete the registration form. Patiently, he fills it out completely. He wants to know if he can pay digitally, and the secretary replied yes. However, before continuing, she noticed her master's gaze. There was a lot of seriousness in his expression. His eyes were saying something to her. Breaking the silence, he apologizes but says he can no longer teach him. The secretary says that business hours are over and asks him to leave immediately, but Wang doesn't understand anything. She says he shouldn't even ask why. Reading his name, they know he's Wang Ji, the dependent everyone's been talking about recently. He doesn't understand why a dependent can't enroll in that gym, and the secretary says it's not exactly that. She says it would be good for the gym to have a noble like him there, but they're just humans who have nothing to offer vampires. Even so, the poor guy didn't catch the clear message that they don't teach bloodsuckers. Xu's final words were that they wouldn't say goodbye to him. Outside and walking, he understood that their attitude changed as soon as they learned his identity. This difference in treatment left him upset. Indeed, they were polite to him and didn't disrespect him, but it was clear he wasn't welcome there. This is a world where vampires are idolized and entire families wish to become dependents, yet he was subtly shunned. He just wanted to know why, and he noticed a noise above. Unexpectedly, a pair appeared right where he was. He asks who they are, as they appeared in an unnatural and sudden way. But one of them is already trying to hit him with a kick. He ends up missing the strike, but if it had landed, would have caused damage. Wang is cornered because the other managed to grab his neck. They ask him if he's really the one who was selected as Lang Yu's dependent. With his silence, they demand an answer, asking him if he's seen a woman who used a weapon. They want to know what happened to her in the end and want an answer right away. Before answering, he thinks calmly. He said that Wu, the guide who sparred with him, doesn't have a punch limited to 388. That strength is much greater. If he'd shown it earlier, he would have become his student. Hearing this left them surprised, and Wu reveals his identity to him. He accepts the identity but demands that he tell him what happened to the woman or he'll beat him up with punches and kicks. squeezing his neck vigorously. He wants to know how much pressure he can withstand. Before he could squeeze harder, Wang grabs his hand. This left his attacker surprised, because the young man's strength was greater than he expected. The other tried to hit him from behind, but was unsuccessful. Turning to him, Wang hits him precisely. Trying to recover, Wu is furious at the young man's audacity, but he is soon pinned down against the ground. Catching his breath, Wang asks if drawing energy from his ability and injecting it into the body is the right way to do it, for there was someone above watching them. And this question was directed at him, Master Xu. Stretched out on the ground and powerless, the disciple apologizes to his master. But he says he had already warned him that this stubborn behavior of acting on his own could be his downfall. He still tries to apologize as he wanted more information about his friend. His master says she died for humanity, trying to change the world, not for a foolish reason like his. Wang agrees with these words, and Wu tells that vampire lackey not to be a hypocrite. But the young man says he's not a lackey, and if he were, they'd already be dead. He's still the same as always and asks if there aren't other cases of dependents who have retained individuality. He wants to know if the master believes him. After hearing this, he said there's a simple way to test what he says. He called the academy secretary, Xiao Quan. She steps out of the shadows in a nurse's outfit completely inappropriate for the occasion. In her hands, she holds a gun known as the Morbius Pulse Treatment Gun. A shot from it causes the target to reveal their deepest desires, and it could trigger a horrifying death. In light of this, he wants to know if Wang would like to try. Wang says yes, without any hesitation. His response and reaction left everyone there perplexed, until he walks toward her. Pointing the gun in his head, he asked her to fire. She says he's naive, and even if he believes he's the same, dependents hit by it end up dying, as they become irreversibly disoriented. But that's precisely why he must try it. Because if he's someone's puppet or could ever become one, he'd rather end it all here and now. If this were to be his end, he'd be grateful and asked once again for her to shoot. The master asks if he's not afraid they're lying to him and that it's just a regular gun. But he realized they're all true and honorable warriors. It would be better to die by their hands than to become a vampire one day. That's why he believes none of them have any reason to lie to him. Once again, he asks her to shoot, and the nurse says he shouldn't think she'll hesitate, until it finally happens. A red flash occurs and his head is pushed back. Wang's body falls to the ground. His body falls limp, and only the sound of the impact with the floor is heard. Meanwhile, the humans watch him. The master tells the others to step back because he might transform and go mad. The nurse backs away, saying she's aware of this. As for the other two, who also prepare themselves, they all watch him intently. Meanwhile, he remains still. The master thinks he used himself as a channel. That pulse cuts off the interaction between the dependent's blood and the vampires for now and still safe. It's time for him to finally show who he really is. He stands up, covered by a reddish aura. To them, there's no doubt that Wang is truly a vampire, who has now lost his sanity. Wu warns them not to approach him until he self-destructs, but they come to understand he's still moving toward them but should already be insane by now. Terribly frightened by what she sees, the nurse tells the creature to stay away from her. However, he easily removes the gun from her hands. Intrigued, he asks if that's the most advanced weapon they have. It's really effective. He was senseless for a few moments and now wants to know more about this technology, because to him it seems similar to what's close to Master Xu. Still serious, he asks if Wang is okay. Wang says he's human, but the young man confronts him, saying he lost his senses for a few moments and could be a hybrid or a new species. Convinced he's proven his humanity, he wants to know if they'll now listen to what he has to say. However, just then, his phone starts ringing. The nurse says he might have a device that blocks the signal, which suspended the gun's effectiveness. The young man tells them to search his body for something like that, and he approaches him with his hands, much to Wang's displeasure. He slaps his hands away, saying he has nothing on him. From above, Xu continues watching everything deep in thought. It's Wensheng who's calling, saying he had finally found him. He says he found something on the internet about how to kill all vampires and wants his master to test it on him, leaving the humans speechless. To him, this proves he's human because no vampire would look up ways to end themselves, and Wensheng wants to access the dependent's space. Now the humans don't know how to react to the situation. The young man asks if the one on the call is really his dependent. Wensheng greets them with a slightly shy and confused expression. Then he is hit on the head with a pistol. But nothing happens, and he even asks if this is a new way of greeting people. Once again, the humans are left speechless, until Master Xu bursts into laughter, followed by the other humans. Wang joins in, but his dependent doesn't understand what's happening. They had finally found some allies for themselves. Now they're no longer alone in this, as humans never stop resisting. For the past hundreds of years, humans have always resisted. The vampires only pretend to care, but they control all aspects of society. Through the internet, education, and even culture, people are conditioned from a young age to praise vampires. Humanity is in this state because of its own greed, but even though it's difficult, they believe that one day they'll achieve victory. Wang is impressed by their confidence. The master is willing to teach him. However, because of his nature, he can't fully trust him and asks if that's a problem, but Wang accepts. Wensheng shows him what he found on vampire destruction, and Su confirms that all of it is true. Only counts and higher-ranked vampires have a core of energy within them inherited through their lineage. Killing a regular vampire is done in the orthodox way as if they were human, but the strongest will only cease to live if their power core is destroyed. Fortunately, there are few counts or higher ranks, as humans stand no chance against them, and they want to kill Wang's father-in-law, so they ask about the trip to the capital. Knowing that Wang is going, they want him to deliver something to a friend, but he mustn't open the box or inspect its contents. He agrees, and without wasting time, Master Xu wants to teach him to control his abilities. This makes him very happy, and Wenqing wants to know if he could learn too. Not being stopped, they both end up very happy. 3 days later, a door opens forcefully. It was finally over, and they're happy to have survived. It's wonderful, and they're finally feeling the sun's rays on their skin. Master Xu's disciples think that now they also understand what it means to be a disciple of this person. He'd only go so far with them now and advise them to train more, acknowledging that they're physically very resilient, and he unintentionally pushed them hard. They're unique with the strength of vampires, but still preserving their humanity. It's possible they're humanity's last hope. Soon it's time for them to leave for the capital. Lanju asks him to look at the photo too, but he's not willing to do so. She says they rarely take a trip, but Wang says the destination is dangerous, though she insists that her father said it would be simple. Something doesn't feel right. He's only thinking about ways to protect himself and deliver the package to that person, but Lanju wants him not to ignore her. Full of longing and needs, she hugs him. She asks if he knows why they're traveling by car and not by plane, and the answer is that they'll have more time alone in that spacious car. Getting closer with mischief, she wants to know if he's interested in testing the shocks. As soon as she places her hand on his thigh, he activates his Innocence Protector mode to 100% and screams like a fool for her to stop, and something unusual happens. He looks puzzled at what just happened. Lang Yu now has a childlike form. With tears in her eyes, she says she hates him and starts crying. He doesn't understand what's going on, and she says she needs to be comforted, but she's willing to stop crying if he kisses her. She smiles, thinking her master is funny. After transforming, he can no longer resist. Because of the master's command, it will take a few days before she can return to her original form. He had grown stronger, and she loves that. In another car, photographers notice that the car they're in is rocking, making them die of envy of Langju's dependent. In the car ahead, there's another person. It's Langju's father, who, while sipping tea, says that the life of the young is truly delightful. Then a small bat flies in through the window. It tells him that the vessel is prepared. He'll need to stay a night in Huzhou, then board the ship and escape under the cover of night. He says the elk still worries about him, but the bat calls him foolish for going to a dangerous banquet and emphasizes that he must flee. Chang Xin hasn't been the same since he became king, but he asks Elk to change his messenger's form because he doesn't like the current appearance. He wants to know what kind of music he would like to hear. Annoyed, the bat says that he asked for this and is treading his own path to destruction. But he's going there to stir things up a bit, something Elk wouldn't understand. He looks at Kiryu, intrigued by what he heard. He told him to be quiet and enjoy the music. The longevity of vampires has always brought death and bloodshed. They finally arrive at the capital. Wang is impressed, and Langju says that Beilu is the most influential city among all 7 kingdoms. That in front of them is the palace. There are many people there because of the meeting. It's all due to the gathering of the 7 kings, but something catches Wang's attention. Some people are being stopped by guards. They don't want the princess to step down from the carriage, but the guards say they're just following the rules. Everyone below the king must enter the palace on foot. There are no exceptions. But in their culture, unmarried women mustn't touch the ground with their feet, and for the princess, this is offensive. The reporters know of the custom from the Sakura nation and wonder if this impasse is a show of the king's power. While they argue, Langju's car approaches. They question why they were allowed to enter the palace by car. They can't answer that, only that Xiyu has never been one to respect rules, and in his case, he would break down the palace gates. And indeed, that happened a few years ago. It seems things will get interesting now that the king has summoned him to be present. The princess's attendants are irritated, wanting to know if they humiliated their princess this way. A bit uneasy, she asks them not to get upset, as it's not a big deal. Opening the window, Langju asks the princess if she would like to enter her car. She introduces herself as Langju and says it must be difficult for her to comply with what the king has stipulated at the palace. She could join her in the car so she wouldn't have to endure this humiliation. With that, she asks her to decide quickly so as not to attract more attention, while the attendants suggest she should leave since there's no respect. But the princess is a bit hesitant. She says she had promised her father she would help with this. Heading to Langju's car, she thanks her, apologizing for having troubled her. Now the princess is with them inside the car. Near her, you can smell cherry blossoms. Meanwhile, Langju asks the driver to proceed to the palace. Thus, her caravan proceeds without obstacles. The reporters notice that the princess had to hitch a ride with Kyu's caravan to enter the palace. This news will make the gossip headlines, much to the displeasure of the princess' attendants. But one of them asks the other to calm down so as not to interfere with the king's plans. Maliciously, they say to let them laugh while they can because they won't be the last to laugh. Inside the car, she thanks Langju for the help she received. Then she nods to Langju. She says that if she ever needs help in the future, she shouldn't hesitate to ask. However, there's nothing she would request from the princess. She asked if she already knew her companion. The princess asks if he's her dependent as he seems weak and vulnerable. She apologizes for her words, but in her nation, dependents aren't usually so weak and are generally commoners. She says that indeed he seems weak, as they have different preferences. In her case, she prefers to nurture and develop her dependent. Wine felt like a pet as she spoke about the satisfaction of raising a dependent to become stronger. After hearing what she said, the princess says she understands her point. Since she's training him, she has a request to make of Princess Kyoheim regarding the spirit of the Securus she possesses. This surprises the young woman. Lang Yu says that scent is very desirable. She wouldn't offer it as she's reluctant, but she knows that young women from her country always carry incense with them. That's why they don't step on the ground to avoid contaminating the aroma, which besides containing power, helps to clear the mind. It maintains beauty and aids with personal training. This is why those who marry women from her nation are greatly envied. One of the reasons why women from there are treated as mere gifts, and the princess wonders if that will be her fate as well. She thinks of her father's image. Soon her Securus spirit will be damaged, giving part of this essence to a kind person. It wouldn't be a problem. That's what she's thinking now. Lang Yu addresses the princess once more. In turn, she extends her hand in agreement. She begins to release the characteristic aroma inside the car. Wan notices that the smell is much stronger, and his mind feels much more refreshed. That is the essence of the Sakura spirit. A small petal forms in her hand. Then she asks them to accept it. It floats over to rest in Wang's hands. Asking him to keep it safe, Lang Yu thanks the princess for what she has done. Looking at her, the young man notices something. It's as if the princess has a deep sadness within her. Approaching him, she says the fragrance is alluring and wants to know if he's interested in other things. In any case, he would become stronger with her essence, and it's not impossible for him to acquire it, as Lang Yu will help him. Outside the palace, many people are gathered. Count Kiyuv has finally arrived and is going to enter the main hall. Behind him are his daughter and her dependent. The bat tries to warn him incessantly not to enter, but he merely brushes it aside, ignoring its warnings. Someone is deep in thought at a house among several trees. Resting their hands on the fence, this person thinks about Kyu. He continues climbing the steps to the hall. Then he looks around, being in the palace vicinity. Being there is the peak of his pride, as the king's majesty is praised by all. However, there's something that makes him thoughtful. His sense of aesthetics leaves something to be desired. He should have consulted him before building that new tower. The king orders Kyu enter at once, and so he does. He faces him with a steady gaze. Finally, Kyu greets his majesty. He makes his greeting to the emperor, who watches him. Positioning himself, he greets two other leaders present there. One is Meng Chang, a 5-star grandmaster, and the other is Ku Li, a 2-star grandmaster. All the leaders are gathered and the session is about to begin. The emperor wants to know initially why the kings are not present. After all, they should have come personally. One of them says that his king couldn't attend because his lands are distant and he had recently acquired new concubines. But they are available for anything he asks, as they are at his command, and the woman beside him praised his skill with words. However, she asked how he'd like to leave this world, as she belongs to the Assassin's Legion. The young man tells her she doesn't need to be so aggressive since he recently became stronger and wouldn't be a match for him. The princess apologizes for her father's absence as he's busy with royal duties, and the young man speaking thought she seemed quite serious. The bearded man says the emperor is arrogant, and with 3 days' notice, there was no way his king could be there. Another says the bearded one should speak for himself, as his foolish statements make him question his intelligence. They begin a small argument, and someone points out that the meeting started 3 minutes ago. Time is scarce, and the emperor should state what brought them all there. He doesn't want to waste time on the king's absences and goes straight to the meeting's main point. The ceremonial officer opens a scroll with the imperial edict. It says that each kingdom's tariffs will be reduced by 10%. Those present bow, agreeing with the message. With that said, he dismisses them to go directly to the banquet, which is already served. The bald man can't wait to find some women and some comment on whether he's truly a Buddhist. The princess wants to know if the emperor will be at the banquet, as she would like to meet him. With that, she leaves the hall, carried by her servants. An elderly man there tells the emperor that he doesn't understand. The emissaries were arrogant, and if it were under the former emperor's rule, they would have been executed, and he requests that they be taught a lesson. Kyu says times have changed and that he should stop thinking about wars, and the old man says he doesn't deserve to be there. Wiping his eyes, he agrees, saying he only came because he was summoned. Looking at his majesty, old man claims he has proof that Kyu has gone mad and caused trouble. Not only has he collaborated with enemies, but he's also leaked military information and should be executed. He defends himself, saying his daughter was looking for a dependent and even his family was part of the selection. But the old man insists he has proof. Drawing out a device, he shows an image of Kyu's daughter with the princess. He says his daughter is kind and only helped the princess because she needed assistance. But the old man insists that it's no coincidence. With the device, he reveals a room which is the basement of Kyu's mansion. There's a place with several masks and a secret passage. Then he shows an emblem of the Sakura Kingdom. They want to know why that symbol is there, suggesting that Langju's mother might be from that kingdom and that he's using it to cover up his betrayal. The old man insists on calling Langju for a blood test to confirm his suspicions. Each blood type belongs to a lineage of elders containing a specific ability. The ability of their kingdom involves spatial manipulation, and the detector would turn red and yellow. If her blood doesn't match, they'd know what it means. Hugh listens to this, but is far from pleased. The Emperor authorizes Langju to be brought in. She finally enters, followed by her dependent. Greeting him, she says the Emperor is in excellent physical shape. Wang looks at the Emperor and notices he has a very youthful appearance. He asked her for a drop of her blood. She didn't understand the Emperor's request. But whatever the result, this is what will clear her father's name. Pointing his hand toward her, he asks her to give him a drop of blood so they can quickly perform the compatibility test. Then he launched what looked like an attack at her, but Kinayu blocked it. Seeing this, the old man taunts him, saying he's finally been caught. He becomes irritated and says he's a baron from a traditional family and a friend of the Emperor since childhood, and that rumors of this will destroy his reputation. The old man is willing to retract his accusations if he can prove his innocence. Otherwise, he stands firm in his claims. The two begin a battle, and Kyu manages to defend against the first attack. His daughter watches all this, frightened. Then he looks at the Emperor and asks if he'll just stand there and do nothing. But the Emperor says that Kyu is being rude and that their friendship doesn't override the Emperor's power, and that he should hand over his daughter's blood. Finally, he realizes the Emperor knew all along. With a defiant smile on his face, he says it's happening. He forms an entity of red energy around Langju and her dependent, telling them to go quickly. After that, a barrier seals them outside. Meanwhile, Kyu continues fighting. Langju walks away, reluctant about what might have happened to her father. A very skilled elder makes a gesture with his hands. With it, he manages to wound her slightly, drawing blood from her wound. Now they have the drop they needed. Kyu remains furious at what's happening. The elders say he's full of arrogance and isn't strong enough to resist the two of them. He looks at the Emperor and says he'll ask one more time if he values the brotherhood they share. His response is that an emperor must be ruthless and unyielding. Concentrating his power, he doesn't question it, but he says that his years of popularity will end now. The elders want to know what kind of threat that is. He wants to know if, after being defeated by him, the two of them will still present themselves as the Emperor's shield and sword. The first one advances to attack him, but Kyu says he'll show him what true aesthetics are. He asks if the old man knows why he wears masks. Some wear them to hide their faces, but he doesn't mind wearing one and doesn't care to be among them. Love and hate, everything is shaped according to how he feels. That's his aesthetic. The elders observe him and realize he's stronger than he appears. This forces them to defend against his attack. Kyu is definitely beyond a challenger level. He's a master challenger above the diamond class. The hierarchy is diamond, master, grandmaster, and top. Still, they are confident that as two grandmasters, he won't stand a chance. But Kyu uses a bloodlust technique, burning his soul. The sky changed color, turning red. He had leveled up once again, reaching grandmaster status. In a rush to end the fight, the elder attacks him with spiritual tigers. An intense sequence of explosions begins. This took a lot out of him, leaving him injured from the effort, and he asked Grandmaster Kyu if he intended to betray his country. Ignoring him, he asked the Emperor if there was any chance they could fight, and if so, then it should be to the death. The Emperor asks if he knows what he's talking about. Old kings die at the hands of the new. He knows he's no match for him, but if he were to choose, he'd prefer to die by the hands of his former friend. If that's what he desires, so be it. On the ground, people want to know what's happening, as the Emperor is taking action. It seems that Baron Kyu has challenged him. This is unbelievable. An elder says it's a disgrace and that the Baron's actions will bring ruin to the country. He will forever be the sinner of the Eastern Kingdom, and the crowd begins calling for his execution. However, all he thinks is that the place is too noisy. Looking at the Emperor, he says he doesn't need to try so hard. All he wants now is to punch him in the face, but his fist doesn't reach him as it's stopped by a protective barrier. The impact reverberates across the scarlet sky. The shockwave is overwhelming. Once again, they are at it. He's been trying to break this barrier since they were children. Only the royal family of the Eastern Kingdom can create it. The Emperor tells him to stop as he belongs to one of the 7 original bloodlines with 10 layers of protection around him. The blows are pointless. Clenching his fists, Kyu says that even powerful skills consume energy. He can burn everything and tells him not to be so arrogant, saying this as he buries his fist in his face. Those watching the fight could hardly believe it. The Emperor's face is now bruised. He says if Kyu does this, things will get more complicated. But it can't get worse than this anyway. The look on his face now pleases him. Before he could react, the Emperor had cut off his arm. This technique separates space with small portals. Now this would be the end of Kyu. After forming a portal, a succession of impacts occurs and blood rains down to the ground. With that, Kyu is gone forever, declares the Emperor. He orders that all of Hugh's blood relatives be hunted down, that the blood purity of all below Challenger rank be checked, and that traitors be executed. As blood rains down, his subjects obey his commands. In unison, they salute the Emperor, wishing him long and prosperous life. Nearby, one from the assassin's clan watches everything. She finds it all wonderful, and the bald man wants to know if that's all she has to say. Q had been obliterated, and now the kingdom's purge had begun. But this was the first time he had fought in front of the people since ascending to the throne. His ability is truly intriguing. But they agree that this kingdom isn't as strong as it once was, and both are already preparing their armies. Q's death acted as a trigger, though the bearded man, busy drinking, seemed unaffected. A trigger for a new world order. The era of peace was over. The princess learned the dinner had been cancelled, but she still wants to see the emperor, although he sent word that he is unavailable. They went to her chambers, asking her to cooperate with the searches. She says they have nothing to do with this and that they should check on others, but the guard says they took advantage of the chaos and escaped, and only she remained there. The Sakura kingdom deserves special treatment. He apologizes for the intrusion, but the princess reiterates that she has something to fulfill at her father's request. She needs to find a way to stay there and become the emperor's wife. The child would secure their future in the coming war. If she doesn't accomplish this, she shouldn't return to the Sakura kingdom. Unable to meet with the emperor, she doesn't know what to do there. Then, she remembered her Sakura spirit. She can feel it. It's somewhere nearby. It must be the small sample she gave to Lan Yu's dependent. The Baron has been killed, and now they are searching for his daughter, but it's possible they are still nearby. Those soldiers are there searching for them. She doesn't know what she should do. She's unsure whether to reveal where they are, but knows it would bring her closer to the emperor. Maybe she could actually get a moment with him and fulfill the mission her father gave her. Before she could say anything, the guards were already leaving, but she started to react. One of them asked what it was, but she was at a loss for words. They said the emperor's order was for her to leave the kingdom by sunset the following day, and her attendants claimed it was an offense to them. Thoughtful, she asked them to take her to bathe because the next day, she would do everything necessary. When they arrived, she asked her attendants to leave as she wanted to be alone, and they found this behavior odd. Gradually, she began to remove her clothing. Immersing herself in the water, she sensed that the fragrance was coming from there and was getting closer, until she found the source, which seemed to come from a shell. As she approached it, red tentacles attempted to wrap around her. Now she was immobilized by them. It was Lan Yu with her hair. She thought it was someone from the search team, not expecting it to be such a delightful woman. Looking to the side, the princess noticed Wang was also there. Lan Yu asked if she had followed the fragrance, and indeed she had. Asking if they weren't afraid, she turned them in. Smiling, she said that the princess was too kind and wouldn't betray those who saved her life. Besides, hiding near her meant they could use her as a hostage if needed. Hearing this left her apprehensive about what they might do to her. But she just wanted to ask one thing of her, to help them leave the kingdom safely and nothing more. However, Lan Yu looked at her with a lascivious smile. She said her dependent was a strong young man who had never had a girlfriend, and if he desired her as his master, there was nothing she could do about it. She started thinking about the naughty things they could do together and how he might take her purity. This disturbing scenario left the princess deeply distressed. It made her cry, feeling she was being bullied. Now shouting, she said they were the bad people here. As a degenerate, Lan Yu said that the more the princess cried, the more excited she became. Meanwhile, Wang wondered if they were really escaping because everything happened so quickly. He didn't even have time to react. In this way, everyone connected to Baron Qiu would be pursued, and he wanted to know if his father and friend would be okay through all this. Lan Yu reassured him, saying that blood relatives were the real targets and companions wouldn't be immediate targets for reprisals. He thought that Master Xu could protect his father and Wenqing could take care of himself. He just hoped everyone would be safe. Now the one in most danger was him, as they needed to leave there safely. As he thought about it, he noticed the princess hadn't stopped crying. He asked Lan Yu why she wasn't mourning what happened to her father. She said she already knew what was going to happen. She has no family now, and he's the only one who shares her blood. This made her realize how close they were. Changing her tone, she wanted to be even closer to him and wanted to share the princess with him for lustful acts. This proposal left him petrified. The princess is leaving the palace with her caravan. After causing a scene, some wonder how the emperor allowed her to leave, as she should have been imprisoned. After all, rumors are spreading that the traitor Qiu was close to the Sakura kingdom's royalty. Before they leave the palace, a guard commands them to stop. The servants remark on the persistent lack of respect, asking if this is yet another routine inspection. However, this is a gift from the emperor, as if it were a farewell from him, and the gift should be received by the princess herself. Inside her carriage, she thinks for a moment before responding. Gradually, she removes the veil covering her. Taking the gift in her hands, she thanks His Majesty for the present. Thus, they proceed, and on her lap sits a small Lan Yu disguised as a dwarf. The guards observe the caravan closely. The box was placed right in front of the princess. Finally, they pass through the palace walls. Meanwhile, they think that this time they were very close to misfortune. Wang, disguised as one of the servants, thinks relieved that they were lucky not to be thoroughly checked. But Lan Yu says they did check. That gift is a detector. As they have a drop of her blood, she considers the possibility that a sample of it is inside the box. If it detects a similar genetic sample, it will certainly activate. Wang wonders why it's still inert. It's a detector. Smiling, she says the answer to that is a secret. She explains it's the Sakura spirit of the princess. telling her not to touch the box as it's a gift for her father. Since Wang is her master and carries part of this spirit, it's easy for Lanju to alter her trace and avoid detection. But this is only possible because her master is strong. She even wonders what his rank is, as he possesses all the skills that made assimilating the spirit easier. The princess says they're nearing the border and hopes they'll keep their word, but Lanju reassures her, for it's now that they'll see the true spotlight. There will be a battle just ahead, before they leave this kingdom. The princess doesn't understand, and Lanju says she is the real target, but the poor thing doesn't realize. Since they want to continue the war, someone needs to die. Finally, the assassins have arrived. There are only 2 masters in the caravan. They think the job will be easy, as the princess's battle skills are comparable to those of a child. The assassins approached stealthily. One of them manages to attack someone in the caravan. Those who weren't attacked react, saying the princess should be protected. Knowing she's under attack, the princess prepares to defend herself. However, one of the assassins is already before her, saying it's a waste of time. She ends up injured and asks who her attackers are. Without answering, he only laments that such a delicious one must die. Soon Lanju reveals herself and defends the princess, eager to show them what true regret feels like. Immediately, the 2 felt the weight in their pants, as this wasn't in the plan. Being the saddest she is, Lanju asked them not to rush, as she wants to savor their suffering. Seeing she'd been recognized, she felt like a pseudo-celebrity, but they want to finish her off quickly. They decided to split their attack. One will target the princess, while the other holds Lanju off. Attacking one of them, she says that if they know who she is, they're aware of the consequences. On the other hand, the princess is exposed and nearly being attacked again. Her attacker gets closer, prepared to kill her. Before the impact, a blue-haired figure with the protagonist's aura appeared. Wang saved her, preventing the princess from finding out if God exists. Ignoring the tension of the moment, she wonders if he's really Lanju's companion. The assassin wants to finish his job and continues attacking. Wang moves with her in his arms, dodging the strikes. However, a small cut is made on his cheek. He sets her down while the princess thinks he's so weak, yet he's still protecting her. Before them, the assassin conjures an energy beast. It grows and charges furiously toward them. In disbelief that Wang can save her, the princess screams desperately. But just before reaching its target, the beast began to sway cold. Its instincts tell it that if it attacks, it will deeply regret it. Meanwhile, Wang has a crooked smile on his face. It's enough to make the beast tremble in fear and abort the attack. Her master doesn't understand why it was so terrified. Behind him, Lanju takes it upon herself to explain that the beast senses the danger, a pity he's unable to perceive it as well. He looks back, trying to react, but in vain. With both guards down, the servants ask what they should do now. There are no more guards alive. They don't know if they can reach the Sakura Kingdom in this way. Comforting them, Lanju says she used to enjoy traveling when she was younger and knows some secret routes. The princess just needs to trust them. One servant suggests that the princess hand over the fugitives to win the emperor's favor. Convincingly, Lanju asks if the princess has made her decision to trust them or rely on the protection of the Eastern Kingdom. She says she doesn't trust them, but there was more she wanted to say. Wang, despite everything, had saved her life, which made her ask him to escort her to the kingdom. The servant, who at this point proved to be a meddler, questions the princess about what she is doing. Lanju took this opportunity to say that escorting her there will be very labor-intensive, and they don't do this for free. The servants become even more indignant, believing it was them who made the princess a target and that they should do this for free. Looking at the princess, he asks if that's what she thinks, but the lady says she just wants to go home, as she is already distressed by the situation. So they agree to take her, but Lanju ordered the annoying servants to leave. At least the princess can pay, unlike them, who already wanted to leave alone, only asking that they not expose her. Concerned, the princess says she'll pay for them too, adding that more people could increase security. This embarrassed the servants with her kindness. The 2 had always served her, raising her, and she cares for both. Grateful, they agreed to depart, saying they'll distract her pursuers. Distressed, she says this would be too dangerous. Since they're servants, they won't do anything to them, and they plan to mislead them by leaving false trails, so they bid her farewell. Reluctantly, she agrees but asks them to stay safe. Lanju says this is the most weepy relative she's ever seen in her life. The princess told her to shut up, while Lanju wants to know what Wang thinks about it. To him, something seems off. It all feels very suspicious. His servant shares the same opinion. Across a desert, the princess's servants continue alone. There they should be safe, and they're going to use a communication crystal to speak with the Lord. They place their hands toward the artifact. A red light begins to emanate from it, until the image of someone appears in the air. The man says this is a one-time use, expensive artifact that cannot be traced, and if it's not an emergency, he will kill them. Addressing Takuren, they ask him to listen, then report the situation. Wrapping up the summary, they want to know what to do next. Since the plan failed, he orders them to kill the princess at all costs. She cannot return to the palace. Only after her death will the king's plan to go to war gain strength. So the 2 servants accept Takuren's orders. Disappearing, he told them to hurry. They don't know what to do now, as using a signal flare that would be very risky. They are willing to return to the princess. If she isn't dead yet, she'll be destroyed by them. Then one of them pulls out a signaling instrument. but is immediately cut. Lenju asks if they're setting off fireworks. She could know they were going to do something romantic alone. If she had known, she would have joined them in lasciviousness. Behind her, the princess stands, unable to believe what she just heard. She cries with genuine sadness because they grew up together. But they say they are loyal only to the king and Lord Takuren, and are doing this for the kingdom, and the princess should recognize her responsibility too. They kindly, if that's possible, ask her to die there. Wang steps forward and says the princess has rights too, and that this idea of dying for the country is something for people with no future and brainwashed minds, and suggested they kill themselves, because the princess would kill herself after, but they are sure that's a lie. He says that even then, there's no guarantee the Sakura kingdom will have a promising future with this sacrifice. The prosperity of this country should depend on sacrificing the life of a beautiful woman, because if that's the case, this country might as well explode. Some vultures fly in the air. One of them looks down, searching for something. Its goal is to find her. Once they find the princess, it descends toward her, releasing a devastating attack. Defenseless, the princess ends up being struck. The vultures reveal themselves in humanoid form. The servant tries to help her mistress. Meanwhile, more arrows rain down from the sky toward them. The impact raises a lot of dust from the ground. The two were visibly dead now. It was too easy, and one of them wonders if it's really the princess, but another responds that her appearance was the same. They must have been exhausted from running, which made their job easier. With the bloody bodies on the ground, their task was complete. All that remained was a photo of her body. The siege on the Eastern Kingdom is now inevitable. With their departure, silence fills the desert. A small shell at the base of a tree is glowing. Out come the princess, Wang, and Langju, and now everyone believes Kiyohime is dead. It won't be harder for them to travel to the Sakura Kingdom in disguise. That mask from Kiyu was one of her father's treasures. It melts into the skin and cannot be detected. Now the princess will have to double the payment, as that was a valuable artifact. She wonders if she feels any regret over what happened. But they are both traitors, so she should be mourning. Wang asks her to go easy, but Langyu points out that even without knowing her, he agreed to the destruction of Sakura. On her way out, she told the soft-hearted ones to rest, as she was going for a stroll. Looking at the princess, Wang asked her to ignore Langyu's words, though he didn't know how to comfort her now. He wants to thank her for the Sakura spirit, and Kiyohime says she's not as strong as he is and unable to protect herself. Uncomfortable being close to her, he said he would leave and let her rest alone. A bit further away, he began to sleep almost immediately. The princess looks once more at that weak companion. Even so, he makes her feel safe. She should thank him in some way, and as Wang sleeps, he feels a warm comfort. It's the fragrance making him feel calmer, and that the place had become cozier. After a while, he wakes up, and as he stretches, his body cracks several times. This left him thoughtful, as he doesn't know why his body made those sounds. Not to mention, he was feeling stronger and very hungry. Setting a hearty meal before him, Langyu says it's snack time. She called Kiyohime to eat too, as she must be hungry. While Wang eats non-stop, Langyu brings even more food for them. The princess finds it curious that Langyu does things for her dependent and wonders if this is how things are in the Eastern Kingdom. Looking at the princess, she says she knows what she's thinking. It's nothing more than care. It's like taking care of a pet. This way they create intimacy, and his loyalty increases even more. She asked if she would like to try a bit. Taking her hand, she invited her to feel what it's like. Kiyohime strokes Wang's hair and doesn't find it unpleasant, as the sensation in her hand is soft. However, he felt annoyed as he only wanted to have his breakfast in peace. Soon the news of what happened to the princess spreads. It doesn't take long for a declaration of war. It happened very quickly, making it clear that war was already desired. Even if the princess revealed herself alive, it would still be difficult to prevent the war. There's nothing they can do about it now. She was used as an instrument, and they ask her what she would like to do. Kiyohime wants to speak directly with her father about this. Langju says she's too weak and naive, probably even believes in Santa Claus. However, she's of noble descent and must have inherited at least half of his blood potential. Even so, she's weak, the weakest noblewoman Langju has ever seen, and Kiyohime says she's always been like this. Perhaps that's why they gave up on her. She wonders if things would be different if she were stronger, and Langju wants to continue the journey to Sakura. If they want to speak with her and try to prevent the war, they need to act quickly. Wang feels that she seems to know something she hasn't shared. In Kyoto, a man says they need to act fast as the armies are preparing. But one of them doesn't care about this and hopes the blood of Sakura will spill on the ground. The bald man asked the king if he's looking at photos of the princess. Indeed, he is, and said she was cute, just like her mother. Unfortunate. Crushing the photo, he became enraged as neither of them showed any of their power. He only married her because of the legend of the Kyuubi Kitsune, but that power never manifested in them. With her mother's personality, her greatest potential was to be a tool. If they held the Kyuubi's power, they could reign over the other kingdoms. However, perhaps that's just a legend. Yamada no Orochi and Great Tengu are two beasts who used to freelance in an anime that has ended. Now they work in this story. They can't wait to tear up the peace treaty and start a war. Nothing can stop them now. Picking up the shell from the ground, Langyu calls them to continue the journey. The princess takes timid steps on the ground. She hesitates a bit to continue. Lanju wants to know what's going on, but she says it's nothing. Because of the attack, she had completely forgotten. But she shouldn't be stepping on the ground with her feet. That's how she was taught. Otherwise, no man would be interested in her since, in the Sakura Kingdom, men put in effort to like women. Remembering this made her burn with anger. Then she took a firm step that kicked up dust from the ground. But they didn't understand her act of protest. Regaining her composure, she asked to be called by her name, Kyoheim. Pointing at a star, she told them to move quickly. A vast expanse of sand lay before them. They quickly proceed through the desert. Looking at Wang, Kyoheim realized that she had entrusted that dependent with her Sakura spirit. Her heart began to race because of this. Lanju, who can sense lustful thoughts, wanted to know why she was blushing, but Kyoheim said it was nothing. In his barbershop, Wang's father says he'll call the police if they stay there. But they say that since he's the father of Lanju's dependent, he's a traitor too. However, he says his son hasn't done anything. He's just a dependent. The oddballs who wouldn't survive the bullying at a serious school say he even put a photo of the two of them at the entrance to attract more clients. While they're inside, the glass shatters. The bald man is furious and tells them to get lost. This is what they needed. The oddballs are going to destroy his shop. And with their scrawny bodies and horrible hair, they're going to teach him a lesson. Unfortunately, the bald man is overweight and middle-aged, which would make it hard for him. But that's when Wenqing shows up to save the day. No one deserves a beating from someone who looks like that. As an enemy of unprovoked aggression, he asks them to stop. But they say this is vampire business and he shouldn't get involved. But Wenqing says they're humans. The oddballs, who are magnets for secondhand embarrassment, say that even though they're human, they love vampire aesthetics. Taking off his glasses, he said some things only a nerd would say. They didn't understand anything, but they sensed it was something that made it clear they're dumb and ugly. It doesn't take long for them to get kicked out of there with punches and violence. Now they realize that the nerd was the non-human one there. He looks at them intently. The oddballs call him boss and want to know why he defended the bald man, afraid of getting beaten up even more. They even want to become his dependents, but Wenqing just asks them to leave. They immediately leave the shop as if nothing happened. Dependents are as obsessed with humans as vampires are, and if he's strong enough, he can have his own dependents, but that's rare. Returning to the shop, he asks if the bald man is okay and says he's a friend of Wang. He wants to know if his son is truly in danger. Wenqing said he's strong, but the bald man remembered his son as a scared child. As he leaves the shop, he wonders where his son could be now. But from the top of a building, they were being watched. Someone is protecting Wang's father, and they realize it's someone high rank. But they're confident that capturing the bald man will give them a clue to Lanju's whereabouts, as she only has Wang as her dependent. Wenqing notices them approaching, and the ugliest one says he smells like a dependent and he must have been transformed recently. He ordered him to eat more or be eaten. The others went after the bald man. Wenqing panics, and the hideous long-haired man says numbers win battles. But the martial arts crowd appears, agreeing with what he said as they arrived in large numbers. They start using their choreographed tokusatsu attacks. With the clowns obliterated, the scarred one tells the bald man he can't stay there anymore and needs to move to a safe place. Wenqing tells him not to worry, as those people aren't bad. The bald man bent down to pick something up, and Wenqing went to him. He had already gathered his belongings and is ready to leave, to everyone's surprise. The bald man, with his hard-earned money, doesn't want a war with anyone. Lanju wants to know why Wang is so sad so early in the day. He just got emotional, but he's thinking that he's been reborn in a completely bizarre world again. Besides now being a fugitive, he has no idea what will happen to him. He starts to hear a song. It's Kyoheim who is singing. This song is sung when one feels homesick. He refers to her as Your Highness, but she asks him to call her by her first name. Suddenly, Lanju appears, saying the two have intense, lustful tension between them and could let it out because she'd love to watch. However, after walking quite a bit, the Sakura Kingdom is now visible. With the clothes they are wearing now, it will be easy to enter. Wan wants to do it right away, but his servant says they need to prepare. He asks how they could do that. Almost an hour had passed. A vendor announces his paper dolls. He offers one to a passerby as a portable paper wife. Wan declines. He's wearing a mask, and the ladies' outfits have completely changed. Impressed by their beauty, a takoyaki vendor tries to earn some money. Since it looked appetizing, they ended up giving in. Lanju asks him to taste a bit of hers. The onlookers could only think he was very lucky to have two beauties as companions. He wants to know if this is the disguise, and she explains that single women aren't allowed to walk on the ground unless accompanied by their husband. They don't want to draw attention here, so they must go along with the local customs. This is the outskirts of the capital. She asks them not to rush and to take a look around. The Sakura Kingdom is smaller than he imagined and is indeed the smallest of the 7, but he wants to know what place that is. Kyoheim looks at it with a distant gaze and tells him that it's the royal sanctuary. It's where royalty pays homage to their ancestors. This is where the dead are mourned, with a ceremony that lasts several days. But even with the supposed death of the princess, nothing is happening there. Her death is just a pretext for the war, but the absence of mourning in the city tells a completely different story. Wang tries to comfort her, but the princess only asks that they keep walking. While they're there, they hear a nearby commotion. It's a man who is outraged because he's in mourning for the princess, but nothing is happening and he's being forced to leave. This is a royal sanctuary, and they should invoke her spirit since her body wasn't recovered, but the guard tells him to stop causing trouble. Kyotoheim hears the man say that she was used as a tool, just as they did with her mother. The old man's belongings fly through the air as he falls to the ground. The guard says that if he continues, he'll end up dead. He gathers his fallen belongings, feeling indignant. The poor man is in mourning. Collecting photos of the princess with her mother, he feels sad to see that they're now covered in dust. Kyotoheim tries to go to him, but Langyu stops her. She recognizes the old man as Grandpa Haneda, but she is warned that they must be cautious and observe more. However, they will follow him now. Back in his house, he says he failed Matsuko, for something horrible happened to the princess. In his house, there's an altar for Matsuko. For all these years, he had to watch her from afar. The only thing left to him is a small bag with hair. Now that cursed bloodline has met its end, Kyotoheim realizes it's her mother's hair and smells a nostalgic scent. Thus, she begins to enter the old man's house, to Wang's surprise. She continues walking toward the old man. Hearing footsteps, he asks who's there. Then he realizes that the person before him is the princess. Wang still doesn't know why he entered the house without warning. With shining eyes, he says this smell is familiar. That's definitely the essence of her mother. The old man is moved, for the princess is alive. He soon worries about what is burning on the altar. He says he shouldn't be able to smell that scent. Kyotoheim asks if that's from her mother because it's reminding her of something. Langyu stops him from extinguishing the fire. He gets a bit agitated, but she assures him they're not bad people. In fact, they are her bodyguards. But the old man wants to put out the fire and ask them to leave and only return when the smell dissipates. But then he realizes something is happening. Holding her head, the princess seems to be revisiting memories. She's feeling an intense headache. The old man is worried and says he has no choice but to hide it. He starts performing a spell, and soon the room shines with a blue glow. The whole house now seems to be within a barrier. Langyu didn't expect him to be capable of a technique like that, but seeing him panting, she offered help. Then she used magic to temporarily blind her. That was the only way to keep them safe. Soon the princess became a source of an aura that kept emanating. They had to protect themselves from that energy. Wang ended up slightly injured, being thrown back by it. Even so, the barrier had bravely held up, until everything finally calmed down once again. In front of the altar, Kyotoheim is sure the scent is familiar. Her eyes are glazed over, as if empty. Memories of her childhood and her mother come to mind, of when she played in the company of the servants, and of when her mother was taken away by force. Her mother's entire family ended up being executed. This happened because her mother was forced to awaken Kyubi, but that didn't happen. On that day, her father even tried to take her life. On the verge of something happening, her mother reacted violently. She tried to kill her husband, who was threatening their daughter's life. Because of this, she prevented something worse from happening. But her actions would have consequences, and she chose to end her own life. She now remembered her mother's body lying on the ground, as well as the shock of having seen all that. After her death, her father collected her mother's blood, and using his own technique, he suppressed her memories. He accomplished this by using the deceased's blood and touching Kyotoheim's forehead. After that, all that remained were flames, which consumed the bodies of her relatives. Because of what was done to her, she had forgotten everything. Because of this, she lived her days without the psychological trauma of the event. As the heir of Kyubi, she lived in a prison of lies. Only great joys or immense remorse, as well as the feeling of rejection, serve as triggers for this power. Kyotoheim's eyes glow as she writhes in pain. The old man looks on, worried. Wang also watches the princess, not knowing what's happening. Her pupils now are slits, and she finally has the power of Kyubi Kitsune. The fox aura is intensely emanating from her body. The power had awakened something that has only happened a few times over thousands of years, as it requires intense emotions. That's why the king massacred Matsuko's clan in front of her, but he didn't succeed. Now Kyotoheim is furious. She was weak her whole life, and now she had awakened immense power. She has the strength the king always desired. But this isn't exactly a good thing. Out of control, she lunges at Wang to attack him, but he dodges. Langyu also managed to defend herself. This awakening requires intense trauma, so she may never regain her sanity. This will progress until she dies from fighting, but Langyu warns that she hasn't fully transformed, as she only has 2 tails. They look at her and confirm this. It's their chance to try to suppress this power. She told Kaneda to do something or everyone there would die, but the old man can only ask how she knows so many details. Without answering, she simply told him to hurry while she went to contain Kyotoheim. She managed to entangle her with her hair while Wang also approached. He threw himself on her, hugging her. The old man used a technique to tie her down. Then he placed his hand on the ground and a magic circle appeared. Gradually, it extended until it reached the rampaging princess. She's inside the magic, and meanwhile, Wang is holding her. Even so, she screams like an enraged animal. Since they were close enough, she ended up biting him. Wang felt the pain of the bite but could do nothing. But little by little, something began to happen. The princess's body grew increasingly lighter. She was no longer struggling. She falls to the ground, exhausted. Finally, the tense moment had ended. However, Langyu makes it a point to say that this is just the beginning. Since there's a magical barrier there, the person who placed the restriction on the princess's mind still doesn't know about it, but things have gone beyond what was expected. The old man agrees that power is far too great to be hidden. Amicably, Lang Yu says there's no choice but to sacrifice the old man, who is surprised. Outside, some people are already watching the house. Takura knows it's Haneda's house, who was close to Matsuko. He is only a pawn preserved by the king's mercy, who allowed him sporadic contact with the princess. But it seems he's hiding something after all this time. A strong blue aura begins to emanate from him. He's always been suspicious of the old man, who said they aren't capable of spying on him yet. Who would have thought that an innocent old man would be a master? He wants to know if all of this happened because of the princess's death. He says she should at least be given a proper wake, and since he's old, he has nothing left to lose, only society's restraints. He says that if they don't do as he says, he'll expose everything the king did in exploiting Matsuko's family. Drawing his sword, the bald man just calls him pathetic and told him to shut up already. Angry, the old man gets ready to fight, but the bald man's sword is powerful and breaks his magic. Thus, he ends up piercing the old man with his blade. With him on the ground, he orders his men to take him away. One of his men asks if he won't be killed, but the bald man says Kekaishi are rare and can die later. Not to mention, he may know more things and should be taken to the Inquisition. As they take him away, he looks back. All of this just for a useless, low-ranked person. Finally, they disappear over the horizon. Amidst the rubble, there's a small shell. They emerge from it, and Wang wants to know if it's safe, but Lang Yu confirms that Haneda was already under surveillance, and that with his capture, they are now free. In the end, the royal family is very arrogant. Meanwhile, Kyoheim remains unconscious. She wakes up startled, calling for her mother. After what seemed like a nightmare, she breathes heavily. Looking forward, she starts to wonder exactly where she is. Standing up, she opens the door of the room she's in. Outside, it seems she's inside the palace. That's the garden that belonged to her mother. Soon, memories of what her mother did to herself come flooding back, and her last moments with her. Her mother's lifeless body lying on the ground. Kyoheim begins to scream and holds her head. Approaching her, Lang Yu asks if she's in pain. Then the princess looks at them. She tells them to leave as this is the palace and being there is dangerous for them. To her surprise, Lang Yu calls her cute. She asks her to look more closely at where they are. This is Lang Yu's space. The shell reproduces the moderator's subconscious, and that's the place that appeared in the princess's dreams. She quickly realizes where they are but wants to know where old Haneda is. He had been captured to conceal her existence. Seeing her expression, Lang Yu tells her not to say she's going to save him, as she laughs in her face. Distressed, she says she knows she's weak. However, she has to do something, and her tears fall to the ground. She doesn't know why she's still alive, given how weak she is. She collapses to the floor, sobbing because of it. Seeing her in that state, he remembered Wencheng and the bald man he calls father. Wang approached the princess to console her. Then she stood up and hugged him tightly, emotional. Using all the empathy he has, he ended up crying too. Weakness is a sin. That's one of nature's laws. The world is crazy, and even a child knows that the strong should protect the weak. That's why he'll become stronger. Hearing this, it was as if her mind clicked. At that moment, she felt a great power dormant within her. It was definitely not an illusion, and she begins to scream once again. The power begins to take over her body. Lang Yu says that with only 2 tails, she won't be able to save the old man. And if she wants to do something, she must control it. And every time she uses it, her body will be consumed until she earns a reward voucher, a beautiful wooden coat. However, she accepts the risks and says she'll live for herself, even if it costs her life. Seeing the situation intensify, Lang Yu ordered Wang to do his job already. He has no idea what it is, but she says the shell will break soon. She told him to use his refrigerator, so he decided to give her advice a chance and remembered what she had taught him. He focused his mind and muscle control, enhancing his concentration, until the refrigerator appeared before him. The door started to open subtly. This is definitely a crucial stage in the process. As he channels that external energy, he needs to be very cautious. Slowly, he begins to absorb the energy, but the small amount quickly strikes his chest with a solid hit. The power is so strong that he's being thrown back. Wang needs to exert a lot of strength to get closer. That's definitely a deadly energy. But opening the fridge, he realizes there's a bit of something that wasn't there before. It's too strong, he has no idea how much he'll need to absorb. Lang Yu reminds him to be quick, as the princess won't hold out much longer. This makes him very anxious, as everything depends on him. Kyoheim continues screaming in pain, releasing a lot of energy. Time is running out, and if she releases the 9 tails, she'll end up dying. The more of his bestial energy he absorbs, the greater her chance of gaining control. He looks at her, still very apprehensive. Then Kyoheim thanks him for his effort. His question is whether the princess would still die if she released 9 tails, even with her humanity preserved. Lang Yu can't say for sure, so he extends his hand toward her, prepared to absorb as much energy as necessary. This causes him internal damage and he coughs up blood. The amount of energy inside the fridge keeps increasing. Finally, he slams it shut. From inside the house, the energy emanates intensely, roaring. Kyoheim crawls across the floor. It's already completely marked by her claws. Then she starts roaring like an animal. She looks menacingly at Wang, who stands before her. His effort is great and he believes he can absorb more energy. Inside his internal space, the fridge is already overflowing. He realizes the door is trying to close. This worries him as the energy outside is still abundant. Once again, he tries to hold it open. The door starts making creaking sounds. Slowly, it keeps closing. This is draining all his strength, but his effort seems in vain as the door continues to close. Shaking from the effort, he begs it not to close, until his pupils change color, and his body is flooded with an unknown power. He managed to leave the door completely open. Outside, his body absorbs QB's energy even more intensely. Kyoheim is exhausted, but she thanks him for his help. However, her relief is short-lived. Once again, QB begins manifesting within her. Another tail had appeared. Now there are a total of 5 tails. Kyoheim's features become even more animalistic. She enjoys this new sensation. It feels good to be like a beast. But there's an internal conflict within her between Kyoheim and QB, who begin to argue. The beast doesn't want to be contained as it hinders its evolution. Then she finally notices something happening. There was someone there, absorbing all her energy. Wanting to stop this process, she lunges toward Wan aggressively. Before she could do anything, Lang Yu intercepts her. But QB avoids being restrained by her hair, cutting it. Lang Yu realizes the beast is enraged. QB continues furious, ready to destroy Konoha. She flees from Lang Yu as her hair reminds her of Kushina and triggers past traumas. She leaps several times to escape the redhead who torments her, until she manages to head toward Wang. However, the honorary Uzumaki clan member prevents the worst from happening, immobilizing the poor fox who only wanted to go to Konoha to cause some mischief. Unexpectedly, she reveals that her body was an illusion, which she learned to do with her former master, Madara. Several shadow clones advance toward Wang to prevent him from absorbing her power. Her hands finally manage to touch him. With him within reach, she roars furiously, biting him in an area with minimal blood vessels in the human body, the shoulder, that make his eyes widen. Immediately, she stops biting him, but he wouldn't let it slide that easily. She ends up biting him again, only on the other side now. Her teeth sink into that less vascularized part of his body. Lanju warned her that she would be devoured by an even larger and bulkier alpha. His eyes already glow red with malice. QB wraps in with her tails, and Wang asks her what it tastes like, since she should drink a bit more as QB's power is diluted. She continues biting him furiously. Then he decides to do her a small favor. He places the tips of his fingers on her forehead, causing them to glow with red energy. Gradually, the energy spreads through the air, and it began interacting with her tails. QB's energy was being released even more, reaching a total of 8 tails while Lanju watches them intently. The amount of energy is so great that the house they were in started to crack. However, the fracture that was forming inside the shell began to disappear. The other Wang praises the space artifact, and Lanju says it's a national treasure that her father obtained. He also asked about the mask used for camouflage, and she's happy that he noticed everything. Thinking a bit, he praised Lanju's plan, saying it was very interesting. Pleased, she said she did it all with him in mind and hopes he regains his strength soon. However, she wants to know if he'll make Kyoheim his dependent as well. She says Kyoheim is just a wild, smelly fox. With a snap of her fingers, she made her tails disappear, saying the decision about it is his body's. As she returned to her human form, she said she enjoyed seeing him with mixed emotions. He said Lanju had done an excellent job, and she promised she'd do everything in her power to help her master. But she loves him deeply and passionately. Wan collapses, unconscious as she touches his hand to her face. In a command room, soldiers inform the commander that they're tracking Sakura's troops. They have popular support to invade the Eastern Kingdom. In the Kingdom of Sa, they have hidden troops ready to carry out assassinations and place the blame on Sakura. In Mirai, they know time for war is running out. Their missiles are prepared to obliterate 2 armies at once, Eastern and Sakura. Among the Bald Ones, they see this as an opportunity, as the war will be chaos. Meanwhile, in the Snowy Kingdom, soldiers ask the chief what they should do. But the mission is to protect the borders, as there will be opportunists in the war. They must remember the nation's motto, an eye for an eye. It's the price the bastard of the Eastern Kingdom will pay. No one will sleep that night. The full moon illuminates the night, and the emperor is in his palace, deep in thought. In the Sakura Kingdom, bald soldiers guard Takuren's mansion. He's sitting before his men. One of them reports that everything is going according to plan. They have supplies and the troops are mobilizing. Then someone arrives and says that Hanada still hasn't confessed anything. This makes the bald man very irritated. He turns back, saying he'll continue the interrogation, and the bald man tells him to return only if he has updates. The jailer approaches the old man, who is chained up. Still weak, the old man notices his approach. His torturer asks if he's ready for hell, but the old man replies that his prostate is the size of an apple. His life is already hell. Then he gouges out one of his eyes, waiting to see how tough he is. He says the old man is lucky the war is about to start, but the elder refuses to say anything. Bravely, he says they're all lackeys of the bald man and the king. Angry, the torturer prepares to kill him. The blade is nearly striking his shiny bald head, but Lanju's hair prevents it from happening. Even with only one eye left, he recognizes them. That couple had been in his home. Worried, he wants to know where the princess is. Langju says she has other matters to attend to and that they need to hurry up. They need to create some chaos in the capital. Then someone raises the alarm that an attack is underway. The bald soldiers gather, ready to capture the invaders, but they are repelled by a blue energy. They know the intruders are there for Haneda. Taking a few steps forward, he regrets the mess. Takuren had arrived with his squad of bald men. The invaders took advantage of the situation as the army is mobilized and the best men are not there. Drawing his sword, he says their efforts are pointless, as the king has been planning this for years. Then he slashes with his bald blade. Entering the building, he sees several bodies on the floor. Once inside, he realizes his prisoner is no longer there. As he's thinking, he hears a loud noise outside. He immediately vanishes and goes up, observing the situation from above. A bald vampire attacks the barrier, shattering it. Its shards fall to the ground. Watching the scene, he realizes they must no longer be there. Once again, he hears another explosion. He quickly identifies the direction of the sound, but there's something unusual about it. It's the library. He needs to hurry. Inside are strategic documents for the invasion and the war. He has been tricked. He positions himself in front of the building, preparing to use his supreme bald sword technique. Within a radius of 30 meters, the place is blocked. They have nowhere to escape now. In Langju's hands is one of the plans. The kingdom had already placed spies along the entire border. The hidden army and the beheading squad were already moving. They had planned very well. But he doesn't care, as he believes none of them will leave there alive. They taunt him, saying he's a traitor to the kingdom and should sacrifice his life out of shame. But he remains unfazed, saying he'll spit on Takuren's dead body. He doubts they can do that, but Langyu looks at him knowingly, as if it won't be a challenge, for she's a master. Wang's battle level is diamond. While the old man is exhausted and missing an eye, she knows he's also worn out from what he's done. Full of swagger, he dares them to attack, saying he'll show them the fury of a man who's been bald since puberty. Even though she taunted him, she asks Wang to handle it in her place, to his surprise. She wants him to wear the bald man down so she can finish him off. Besides, he had absorbed a lot of energy, so he needed an opponent to help him tap into that potential. And this bald man is the perfect choice for that, as Wang's abundant hair already leaves him completely affected. Without waiting, he charges furiously at him with his sword. The blade passed close to Wang. The blow was so intense it cut through the structure behind him. It was so close that it gave him chills, making his whole body tremble. The strength of someone at challenger level is truly immense. This time, 2 slashes are coming his way. It was too fast. What he learned from Master Xu wouldn't apply here, and he didn't know what to do. However, there was something else he learned from him besides combat movements. Strength control, and he remembered when he was exhausted, and Master Xu would still make them keep training. They are stronger than the strongest human because they're dependents. They're not supposed to be tired. It's all a matter of efficiency. Exhausted, they have no idea what the Master is talking about. Everyone uses the same fuel, but their efficiency is low. The Master can use his full potential. Interested, he wants to know how he can do this too. He told him to chew with his teeth, feel with his hair, breathe through his pores. Feel the energy touch his body and then put it where he wants it. The energy starts to burn his body and he visualizes it within the fridge. He's going to burn it completely, slamming on the accelerator. His fury grows, his fangs are fully visible, and he lets out an enraged roar. Now it's Juan who's on the offensive. The bald man didn't expect the dependent to be able to burn his energy, as that's a foolish thing for ants to do. But he was struck hard in the face. As his body flies from the impact, he tries to imagine how that could be possible. He shouldn't have been hit under any circumstance. Wang's body overflows with energy, though his arms are injured. Looking closer, the bald man understood what happened. He aimed at the escape point, but Wang advanced, finding a gap between the 2 attacks. Because of that, he only hurt his arms superficially. This simply made him feel humiliated, as now he's not only bald, but also made to look like a fool. Wang continues his relentless assault, but one of his fists is grabbed by the bald man, who twists it violently, as if wringing out a cloth. He couldn't allow his bald pride to be trampled like that. This dependent must now suffer the consequences. While holding his arm with his other hand, he's prepared to slice him completely. But Wang manages to step back slightly, making the wound superficial. Now the bald man leaps into the air and prepares to deliver a devastating blow. His rage is immense as he wants to restore his bald pride. The blade shines intensely with his energy. Wang's eyes have changed and his pupils resemble a fox's. He roars like a wild animal, heading straight for his attacker. The two are now on a collision course. His arm no longer injured, he plans to tear the bald man's insides out with it. A powerful explosion occurs as they clash. On the ground, Langju and the old man watch that monstrous battle. Worried, the old man says that Takuren is still alive. Langju, however, continues to watch everything intently until they finally see what happened, much to the old man's surprise. The bald man's sword had penetrated Wang, passing through him. Langju says he's only at diamond level and Takuren is 2 levels higher, at challenger level. Victory was far from possible, which left the old man desperate. Now he thinks there's no more hope, but she reassures him, as she's still there. Not to mention Wang is still very much alive. Takuren grips his bald sword firmly with both hands. while Wang's hand had made contact with his abdomen. With his other hand, he grabs the sword and Takuren orders him to let go, but he knows that now the bald man is trapped. He grips the sword even tighter, saying he's good with his fists. He's not going to play around with a knife fight anymore. Now they'll have to trade punches, delivering a powerful blow to a part of the bald man's anatomy that made him writhe in pain in a nearly unfair way. He screams, feeling that a fragile, delicate structure has broken. The pain is so intense that he cursed him in every possible way. Furious, he screams with such rage that he threw Wang far away. Unfortunately, the young man has now lost consciousness, but the pain is intense, and he still hasn't recovered from the low blow, his voice now permanently raised 2 octaves. The barrier he created remains in place. The bald man is determined to end the fight with his next strike, but Lanju's hair suddenly appears. She saved her master from a blow he couldn't avoid. Handing her beloved to the one-eyed old man, she says the first round is over. Now he'll have to fight her. And she's not as inexperienced as Wang. Provocatively, she asked him to show mercy. With his sword in hand, he smirks at the request. Everything that's happened so far is unacceptable. Besides having his pride wounded, he has become a one-ball. He would never allow someone of lower class to oppress him. His arms begin to emit energy, as does his sword, which grows in size. He starts to scream as if he were a character from a show where the protagonist has blonde hair and a monkey tail. His energy filled the entire place. Fully charged, he prepares to unsheath his sword. Lan Yu continues watching, unimpressed. Meanwhile, the bald man assumes an offensive and menacing stance. From above, he observes his victims. The old man warns that he's the best swordsman in the kingdom and that she doesn't stand a chance, but they need to stop him to avoid trouble for the princess. Besides, she'll only know her chances if she tries. He's a master challenger, while she's just a master, and indeed that was her level. But after the marking of passion, her power increased. Her master's mark heats up on her forehead whenever he also grows stronger. This reminded her of Wenqing and the jealousy she felt at that moment. She wants to know how strong her master really is, but she also wants to see how far she can go and has long desired an opportunity. It's her turn to try too, to get a sense of how powerful her master is. Before the bald man, she also emits her energy. Then he draws his sword before her. Pointing it upward, several beams of energy shoot toward Langju. Without any difficulty, she dodges them all as if it were just child's play. The more he attacks her, the more she effortlessly dodges without breaking a sweat. But she managed to get close to the bald man. Enraged by this, he strikes a direct blow. A slash flies through the air and is very close to her. However, her characteristic red energy quickly envelops her completely. Then he realized that his strike hadn't been effective. Langyu remains unscathed and uninjured, which only makes him even angrier, unleashing even more attacks, devastating the area. With agility, she managed to get behind him. However, experienced as he is, he was already prepared to cut her. Impatient with the fight's progression, he wants to end it all quickly, launching a precise attack on Langju. This made the old man panic as she was hit directly. Gradually, the mask covering her face shatters. Then she sighs in relief after that. Intrigued, the bald man wonders if she's excited by the fight, to which she says she's having a lot of fun. It had been a long time since she put in so much effort, and it made her feel very good. After finishing speaking, she began to laugh as if she felt the greatest joy in days. This only made the bald man angrier, and as he attacked, he ordered her to shut up. Once again, he launches a powerful attack at her. On the ground, the old man had to create a barrier to protect himself. However, the protection soon broke, while the bald man's energy obliterated everything around. Using his remaining eye, he looks up, frightened. There was only a bright, intense red like a star. Faced with this, the bald man observes the unusual formation. The red glow grew more intense, until energy blades began to manifest and one of them ended up touching him. His eyes widened at this. He felt something painful in his body. There's blood on his chest. This made him grip his sword defensively, as he had been cut. Meanwhile, Lanju's energy continues to grow stronger. The mark on her forehead is now very prominent. Behind her, an energy formation appears like a constellation. Seeing this, he can't believe what he's seeing. On her forehead is a blood heraldry of the ancients. Only the 7 originators with their complete genetic chain and the royal family possess blood heraldry. She wasn't supposed to have one. Now properly scared, he asked who the hell she is. Below, the one-eyed old man says that blood domination is like a beast encountering an herbivore and he can barely breathe. Smiling, Langyu says what she has resembles something legendary. Now the question is whether she can finish off the bald man with it. The most powerful swordsman in the Sakura kingdom, Takuren, the bald one. With that, her fighting power doubled. Now they're at the same level. Aware of the risk, he prepares to attack once again. He can no longer allow the fight to continue without an end. She likes men who speak tough like he does and wants to know if the sword is the same way. As tough as his words, the force is crushing and his sword cracked. The blood heraldry is strong, but he's no longer impressed because he believes she won't be able to stay on equal footing with him. Excited, she says she can't hold back with him anymore. Her energy hadn't just grown. Now it's flexible and can even vary in length. Skillfully, he defends himself with his sword from her attacks. Lang Yu is pleased with it. The ability granted by her master is truly very useful. Overpowering the bald man, she wonders if she could make more than one ring. If she had a few more, it would be all too easy, while the swordsman prepares to strike back. But he needs to defend himself against it, while she smiles, thinking about what she could do. His sword couldn't withstand the pressure and finally broke completely. She told him to bow, for even with a broken sword, she wouldn't disdain him. His hands trembled with rage. Jabbing swords into his own body, he said the most powerful warrior of Sakura wouldn't lose. The one-eyed old man knows this is a self-destructive technique. He intends to blow everything up. Lang Yu also realized it's not what she expected anymore. The fight had pushed him to his limit. The bald man smiles like a madman and hopes the king remembers his loyalty. As he prepares to explode, an energy surge appears in the background. He realizes something is happening. That's the king's reanimation technique. The king is in danger, making him momentarily distracted, worried about what might have happened. He shouted for the king, utterly concerned. But one of those tentacles pierced his flesh, dragging him back to the palace while he screams in pain. As his body is crushed, he doesn't understand how this could be happening to him, a loyal general. This made him beg for mercy. While on the ground, several people try to escape it. The one-eyed old man knows that it's really from the king and that he's possibly under attack. For that, he must be wounded, which makes him wonder what he must be fighting against to need to recharge like that. Lang Yu breaks into a sweat as she's truly exhausted. She took the opportunity to lay on Wang's lap. Turning to her, the old man asks if she knows anything else and where the princess is. She smiles, thinking about who the king could be fighting. Soon, a figure with many tails and a white body is seen. Then the old man realizes it's the princess. She's using the power of Kyubi to confront the king. But despite everything, she's very pleased because she's finally going to kill her father and avenge what he did. The beast with many tentacles prepares to launch an attack with its mouth, but the princess isn't impressed at all. 3 hours earlier, Lang Yu was asking her what she'd like to do since she released 8 tails and shouldn't die in vain. All she wanted was to confront her father about everything he had done, but she already knows the outcome. What she wants is not an answer, but his confession. She wants him to regret it and admit he loved her mother and still loves her, but Kido says that's not it. For what he did, she can't forgive him. There's only hatred in her heart now. But Lang Yu says she has a soft heart and is easily deceived. However, if she insists on seeing him face to face, she'll have to discover what she wants for herself. She should fulfill her last wish and meet him, but if she dies, she should at least let go of her past. Kido asks what she means by that, but Lang Yu says she'll find out soon enough. They will save Vanita, but they need her to hold off the king. Then Kido asks her to thank Wang for what he did for her, as she hurt him unintentionally. Smiling, Lang Yu says she truly remembers nothing. After that conversation, it was time to go. So she went to her father's palace. Arriving there, she opened the doors slowly. She saw her father standing before a cherry tree announcing her return. He looked at her with a cold expression. Now the two had a chance to talk. His wife loved cherry trees and he planted them all over the palace. She was kind and their last cherry blossom was the daughter they had together. Now she had awakened the Kyubi. He had already sensed this energy earlier and congratulated her. Approaching her, he said he wanted to see her more closely. Asking her to trust him as she did when she was young, she says she missed him and he responded the same. Her transformation is still incomplete. Once it is finished, the Kyubi becomes an immortal battle beast, but without control over itself. He had waited for this day since she was born, and then Kido realized what was happening. Attacking her, he asked for forgiveness, saying the royal family's bloodline is too diluted. Now he needed to find the last Kyubi and consume it. Only then would he become purer and be on par with the nobles of the other kingdoms. Then she said that for this, he killed her mother's family and now wants to sacrifice her. All he did was to consume her or else use her as a pawn to ignite the war. He only thought of power and manipulated her all this time. He doesn't deserve to be her father. Manifesting the power of the Kyubi, she destroyed the snakes binding her. Witnessing her power, he rejoiced, confident that by consuming her, he would become even more powerful. He sent his Shikigami toward his daughter to devour her. They charged at her with violence. All she wanted from him was just a confession. Now she's willing to make sure they both die together. The beast summoned by her father roars, but using her tails, she defends against the incoming attacks. She then used the clone technique popularized in the show with the blonde protagonist in an orange jacket. The energy beasts hissed. They were unable to overpower the nine-tailed power. The king looked at this and acknowledged her power was fascinating. Kiyohime was already behind him, ready to settle the matter. She just wanted the degenerate to die once and for all. The king is confident because he has 3 Shikigami and has only shown her 2. While defending himself, he wonders if she isn't curious to know where the third one is. Gradually, it begins to emerge from somewhere, revealing its monstrous face as it leaves the magic circle. Flames begin to pour from its mouth. They strike the Kyubi, who tries to defend herself. Kiyohime's situation has become a bit more complicated. This makes her talk to her clones, asking them to focus on Shutendoji. Immediately, they go to him to do as the original instructed. His eyes gleam as they focus on the princess, and his body begins to emerge from that magic circle. With a precise attack, he managed to hit the Kyubi. This caused her to agonize a bit as the impact was strong. The immense beast, very similar to the ocular summon from a certain show, continues its beating. There are no more available clones, and her father wants to know what she'll do now. If there are no more tricks, it's time for her to become food for the Shikigami. Angry, she asks the Kyubi to unleash all its power. Her body glows intensely as the ninth tail begins to appear. Now her body is fully transformed. This is the true Kyubi Kitsune. Her personality changes, and she says she loves the raw nature of humans, saying that what the king's blood lacks is humanity. The degenerate looks at her, intoxicated by her beauty. Kyubi walks through the sky as red petals begin to fall, but soon the king realizes they're not flower petals. It's blood falling from the sky. The Shikigami had been beaten. This makes the king happy because the strongest of the Shikigami is his daughter, whom he wants to consume. Looking at him, she says he's weak, yet he still wants to consume her, so he tells her not to underestimate him. He only wanted to test the strength of the Kyubi. Now it's time to show her how strong he really is. Releasing immense power, he says she doesn't have what he has. She widened her eyes at this. That's the blood heraldry that only the royal family possesses. Even if she is strong, that Kyubi power does not belong to her. Only the blood circle is absolute. Those who possess it have the power of domination. Now it's time for her to surrender and accept becoming a snack for her father. In this way, he believes he'll be invincible. He then unleashed the full power of his blood circle. A tentacle extends from the creature, trying to absorb Kyubi, but she simply vanished. It was a shadow clone. Kyoheim realizes he's indeed strong but lacks control and will soon collapse. She just needs to wait. Now it's up to him to find her, and time is running out, which has left the king utterly enraged. Out of control, he just wants her dead now. In his fury, he started attacking his own servants, but he was intentionally devouring them to increase his own power. Kyoheim says he's pathetic, and that for everything he's done, he deserves to die. Once again, she used her clones, determined to finish him before he gets even stronger. Using her tails as weapons, she started striking him with the resentment of a child who didn't have a good father. In the face of this, the beast he had become felt the heavy barrage of blows. The old man watching it all said she had hit his vital points, and that's the full Kyubi Kitsune. It's a stunning sight, and he only wishes Matsuko were there to see it. However, she was soon hit as well. The old man knows what that purple glow is. Blood pours from Kyoheim's mouth. She was injured. The king smiles afterward, claiming he has no weak points. He had devoured enough servants, and now her strength is no match for his. He destroyed half the city, but the poor will soon multiply again. With her trapped, it was time to savor the delicacy. Nearly unconscious, Kyoheim doesn't want to let that happen. Determined to stop him, she began the self-destruction process. She turned into several peels and vanished from the king's grasp, which left him enraged. He thought he had lost his chance to ascend and immediately began to be attacked again. Throughout the city, people continue trying to escape his onslaught. Driven mad, he's determined to devour everyone because he is the king of this place. On the ground, the old man is prostrate, saddened. He can't believe the princess has left like that. Lanju has little energy left and wants to know what they can do. One of the king's hands is nearly upon them, ready to devour. Completely resigned, the old man wishes to die alongside the princess. In Wang's lap, she says it's now up to her master, who remains unconscious from having exerted himself so much. Inside his inner space, a petal begins to glow, until it changes shape, becoming a woman. It's Kyoheim who had appeared there. The Sakura spirit she gave him also contained a portion of her spirit. Now she's within Wang's internal space. Inside, she noticed there was an enormous palace, and sitting on a throne is the one she believes to be Lanju's dependent. But she realizes his aura is too intense. It can't be just a simple dependent. He is stronger than her, yet she's startled as the Kitsune had lost control. Meanwhile, Wang had approached her, and the Kitsune that was there vanished completely. Indeed, he's a monster, which made her feel afraid. He tells her that this last part of her spirit won't last long and that people are suffering for her outside. Hesitant to respond, she thinks that in the end, there's nothing she can do. Wang wants to make a proposal since he needs her strength. A bit more interested, she wants to know what she can do for him. His proposal is for her to become his dependent. This immediately embarrassed her. However, if it were that way, she'd be able to keep living. This way, she could save innocence. Without responding yet, Wang urges her, wanting to know if she has an answer. Her face is flushed and she's sweating nervously. Then she bows before him, agreeing to become his dependent. Thus, he points one of his fingers at her forehead. Immediately, a mark appears, the same one his dependents have. The old man had already given up and had lost hope, until a pink glow begins to emanate from Wang's body. Cherry blossom petals appear in the place, and they begin to move intensely. The king was incredulous at this, as Kyoheim had reappeared once again. It's definitely impressive, and he's shocked that she's alive. Even so, she's nothing against his blood circle. Without another word, Kyubi charges toward the king. This time, she begins beating him mercilessly. In the blink of an eye, she initiated and concluded a painful beating session. The old man who was depressed moments ago is now cheering as if he doesn't know what sadness is. This attack left the king much weaker. However, he continues devouring people to restore himself, believing he'll soon return to full strength. Seeing this, the old man sinks back into depression, saying everyone will die and become food for the king. He believes he can't be killed because of his blood circle, so Kyoheim says that if that's the case, she'll need to eat him. Since he's truly self-centered, he can only laugh at her comment, until a fox actually starts devouring him. This unexpected outcome startles him, and if he wore underwear, it would be heavy by now. Kyotoheim is much more powerful now. The king says that the challenger's blood circle will only choose the noblest host and she has no chance. He believes that with 3 Shikigami he has the advantage as she only has 1, but Kyotoheim is determined. Desperately, he realizes that the blood circle has chosen her. Now, she is utterly devastating. Once again, the old man's mood changes, leaving his depression as he realizes she absorbed the king's blood circle. The Shikigami bow before her, wishing the queen a long life. This makes the king even more desperate, as he has nothing left. Finally, it's all over as she thinks her master's power far surpasses her father's, and she wonders who he truly is. Discontented, the king says he won't lose, but all he got was another round of punishment. His body explodes in the air afterward. Several cherry blossom petals drift toward him. The living citizens realize that the princess has emerged victorious, defeating one of the 7 kings. Things were returning to normal now. The princess was restoring power to the people. In an act of gratitude, they bow before her. The old man realizes she had done the impossible, uniting the 4 Shikigami. She hovers in the air with them surrounding her, using the power of the Kyubi. Completely moved, the old man believes that Matsuko can finally rest in peace. She continues floating above the city. While on the ground, people wish the queen a long life. They repeat the same words in unison as she stands on the rooftop. With Takuren dead, she orders one of the servants that the attack on the Eastern Kingdom be immediately suspended. They immediately use the communication crystal. The message is passed to the general, instructing the troops to stop advancing. He says he has no queen and only takes orders from the king, so the messenger tells him the king is dead and his daughter has inherited his powers. This infuriates him and he wants to die with his king. He cuts off the message right away. Kyotoheim ordered messengers to go to the Eastern Kingdom to propose a truce, as she would handle the border situation. They did as she commanded, and the messenger will arrive by dawn the next day. Meanwhile, Wang remains unconscious. Within his internal space, things are happening. As he opens his eyes, he realizes what's in front of him without even knowing where he is. Now they are no longer dressed, and their bodies are close in a very intimate way. The passion has taken place, it's consummated. The army is assembled on the eastern border. Furious, the Bald Squad is ready to launch a massive attack, condensing their energy to strike at the protective barrier, which was strong enough that it began to crack, much to the defenders' dismay. The attack continues relentlessly as a prim and proper observer watches everything. That technique, used together by an army of challengers, has the strength of a nuclear bomb. The Sakura Kingdom has initiated the attack, and soon the other 5 kingdoms will continue the siege. And these armies will take the opportunity to seize a vast territory. Even so, the old man doesn't give up, and even if he dies, will do everything to defend his emperor. Meanwhile, important people on the battlefield are observing everything. The assassin smiles at this because she wants to see how long they'll be able to hold out. The old man does his best to keep resisting, until a massive explosion occurs, causing him to be thrown far away. The barrier's attack was intercepted, creating that huge shock. He even thinks it was the emperor who did it. The land is devastated, and the Bald army is scattered, making them wonder who did this. Everyone is shocked by the strength of whoever blocked the Bald Squad's attack, because this person must be incredibly strong. Standing there is a masked man very similar to Wang. Of all possible outcomes, this is the most absurd for those who saw the scene. The old man immediately realized that this is Lang Yu's dependent. He felt superpowers growing within him, and with him is the Kyubi Kitsune. The man with glasses recognizes the princess of the Sakura Kingdom and has no idea how she's still alive. She rises in the sky and the general recognizes her, but he also thought the princess was dead. This is a surprise for everyone as the princess's aura is incredibly powerful. On the wall, the old man is still stuck on the thought that a dependent shouldn't have all this power. She says the king has perished and that she is now the queen, ordering the Bald Squad to retreat, but the general responds that he only serves the king. They will stand by him until death and won't change their alignment. From above, she observes them as if they were ants. Since that's the situation, she will let them demonstrate their loyalty. Using her power, she begins to make their bodies levitate. The bald monk is caught in the crossfire and can't move. The same happens to the prim one, who can't understand how the Sakura Kingdom has someone so powerful. Behind her, the Shikigami roars with fury, releasing arrows from its mouth. They begin to tear apart all those who wish to die with the king. This leaves the onlookers utterly terrified, while the queen declares that the war is over. Now she proposes a pact of friendship between the kingdoms. Hearing this, the old man is left utterly confused. The prim one criticizes her, saying it was her kingdom that started the war and now ended it before it even began. Supporting this, the monk says it's not her place to make that call. The assassin threatens her, saying that withdrawing from the war will make Sakura their target. Full of confidence, she asks if they are truly threatening her kingdom, as they must think there are no big names over there. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.